Welcome, everyone, to the Pleasanton Unified School District School Board of Trustees meeting of May 6, 2021. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty, so tonight we are back in the boardroom again, and I'll do a little bit of introductions for the folks at home watching. To my right is Dr. David Haglund, our Superintendent of Schools. I'm Joan Larson, serving as the board president this year. To my left is Vice President Mark Miller, Trustee Steve Maher, Trustee Kelly McCaughey, Trustee Mary Jo Carrion. And in the room with us here, we have Dr. Janelle Woodward, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Mr. Ed Dialazo, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services, Mr. Julio Hernandez, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Ahmad Sheikh-Lasami, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Mr. Patrick Gannon, who is our Coordinator of Community Engagement and Communication. So tonight, I think we might have Brian Glasgow, our student board member, on the line with us tonight. Yes, okay. He'll join us at the appropriate time. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, sorry about that.
Wonderful, I'm so good to see you. All right, so tonight I do have a couple of things to announce out of closed session. Sorry, the spring allergies are making my voice a little hoarse. For item 2.3.1, on closed session, item 2.3.1, the board voted 5-0, moved by Trustee Larson and seconded by Trustee McCaughey, to approve a compromise and release agreement for internal case number SED 140.20.21 for the amount not to exceed $28,450. And then we also have item 2.1.1, which is the appointment of our Director of Student Services. And the board voted unanimously and with pleasure to appoint Ms. Leslie Heller to that role. Leslie, are you with us tonight?
Yes, I am.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, President Larson, Vice President Miller, board members, Dr. Haglund, and cabinet members. I am honored and humbled to have been selected as the new Director of Student Services for the Pleasanton Unified School District. As some of you may know, I have been a part of the Pleasanton community for the past 20 years as a teacher, administrator, and most recently as the coordinator of student services. I am excited about this new role and especially about my ability to help support the district, work with families, and provide resources for individual school sites in all areas regarding student services. Thank you again for this outstanding opportunity.
Congratulations. We're very excited. All right, that concludes the action that we took in closed session this evening. So we'll move on to item 5, which is approval of the agenda. Is there anything to?
I have a request. There were some teachers who would like to move up something on the agenda.
And what?
12.5. If we could just move it up.
Do you want to move it up to the first item in report discussion and possible action?
I'd put it to 12.3.
Yeah, 12.3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, we can do that. Would you like to make a motion to approve the agenda with that amendment?
Sure, I'll make the motion, yes. Yes.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to move to item 12.5 up before 12.3. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And aye as well.
I have a question about the consent. Do I wait until then?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're on to item 6, recognitions and introductions. Dr. Haglund.
Okay, for our first recognition tonight, I'd like to hand this over to Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund.
It's a pleasure to announce our Teacher of the Year. Each year, we are proud to honor the inspiring work of our teachers through our annual Teacher of the Year program. And this year has been exceptional, excuse me, I guess I'm getting the allergies as well, exceptionally significant with the shifts in instructional models our educators have navigated while supporting our students. Before we congratulate this year's Teacher of the Year, I'd like to take a moment and recognize all of this year's nominees. Stacy Elkhorn, Hart Middle School. Leanne Bean, Harvest Park Middle School. Brian Camp Lealty, excuse me, Fairlands Elementary School. Karen Cobb, Pleasanton Middle School. Felicia Dawes, Valley View Elementary. Michelle Jerk, Foothill High School. Elizabeth Lauderbach, Pleasanton Middle School. Lennis Sadler, Valley View Elementary. And Cheryl Weinhausen, Hart Middle School. It is my privilege to congratulate Village High School's Russell Sato as PUSD's 2020-2021 Teacher of the Year. Mr. Sato, or just Sato as he is known on campus, is an incredible educator, serving Village as an English and college and career teacher for the last 8 years. Prior to Village, Russell taught a year at Foothill High. He is dedicated, thoughtful, knowledgeable, caring, and compassionate. He invests the time and energy needed to get to know each and every one of his students, and that allows him to bring out the very best in them. Students who are lucky enough to have Russell as a teacher leave his classroom more prepared to take on the world and make it a better place. He brings subject matter alive by personalizing his lessons, and through responsive teaching, he's able to meet every learner where they are at and help them grow. We are all incredibly proud of Russell and extremely thankful for all that he brings to our community. Congratulations, Russell, for being the Pleasanton Unified School District Teacher of the Year for 2020-2021 school year. Russell's name will be submitted for the Alameda County Teacher of the Year Award, which will be announced this coming fall. Russell, we'll invite you to say some words, please.
Great, thank you so much. Such an honor, and I know that there is a packed full agenda tonight of different items to discuss, so I decided to write something down here to stay on track. So here we go. So when I found out that I'd be recognized at this board meeting, it started to sink in for me. This Teacher of the Year thing is actually happening. I decided to write something down to hopefully share a few words about who I am and what this award means to me while keeping my nerve. I started teaching at Foothill High School in 2006. This was an amazing introduction to education. I taught sophomore and senior English, coached track and field, and met so many educators who I still consider role models to this day. I moved to New York in 2009 and taught in the South Bronx for 1 year at an out-of-school youth center where I worked with 16 to 24-year-olds, preparing them for the GED, helping them gain employment, and supporting them as they navigated their first years of college. I eventually settled into teaching English and serving as a dean of discipline at a public high school in the same area. When I returned to the Bay in 2013, I was lucky enough to earn a job at Village High School, where I've taught English ever since. No brief summary can do justice to how much I love my school. It's kind of like, if you know, you know. I will just say that it's a special place to teach, it's a special place to learn, and it is a special place to grow. I believe it is one of my responsibilities to be a teacher first and an English teacher second. If a student can leave my class with a greater level of authentic confidence built through self-discovery, then I feel like I'm doing my job. Years after graduating, when I bumped into a former student out in the wild, like I like to say, it's amazing the things that they tell me that have stuck with them from our classes together. If they're now in college, they might talk about how our class has prepared them for their undergraduate course load. But when I run into students in their 20s, and at this point 30s, at 24-hour fitness, or in the checkout line at Home Goods, or walking my dog on the side of the street, they remember the meaningful conversations. They remember the small acts of kindness. They remember the personal stories shared. They remember the moments of patience, and they remember the environment that we created together. When I was in graduate school, I was always told I would be underappreciated as a teacher. What's crazy is that it's been exactly the opposite of that. If you look in the right places, there's gratitude all around us. I just want to say that I feel so much gratitude in my heart to be seen by this district, and I hope that I can pay that gift forward to our students and my fellow colleagues. Thank you for this honor.
Dr. Hagelin, may I say a few words?
Please do.
I'm planning on reminding everyone, and I hope that in the fall, we will be able to be in person for the Teacher of the Year award ceremony. It is one of the, I have attended since before I was on the board, as a matter of fact. And yes, you have to travel just a little ways for it. It's usually over the hill. But it is just the most amazing experience to hear teachers like Russell express why they do what they do and how they do what they do. And it's so inspirational. And I would love it for this fall, and like I said, I'm sure I'm going to remind you all to put it on your calendars when we know the date. I would love to have a big cheering section of Pleasanton in the room when Russell is recognized on stage. So anyway, congratulations. It's an honor to be nominated by your peers for sure, and to be recognized as Pleasanton's Teacher of the Year. Congratulations.
Okay. All right, so our second recognition tonight is related to this past week. We marked National Day of the Principal. And I spent time visiting all of our sites and delivering a personal thank you from the cabinet to recognize the persistence and dedication each of our principals has exhibited during this pandemic. We are truly blessed to have an incredible team of leaders that serve our school communities. They, along with their vice principals, have led their schools through multiple shifts and transitions this year. And they are quickly approaching the end of one of the most difficult years that the educational community has ever had to face. These amazing women and men have dedicated countless hours to the planning, and yes, replanning, for the successful return of students to our schools, all while supporting the safety and well-being of the community and of their own families. For the first time in a long time, there's light on the horizon. Our principals have captained their ships like heroes. Friends, I'm incredibly grateful for your strong leadership and thoughtful service throughout this tumultuous and crazy-making school year. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and all of us in PUSD, thank you. I think we have a few principals that have joined us this evening. If any of you would like to say a few words or simply say hi to let us know you're here, please do so.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund.
How's your office going, Janet?
I have a sheet behind me to hide the fact that I'm in the staff lounge, where we're not back in our office yet.
On top of all of the craziness of COVID, we had a water leak in the office at Donlin, and we had to relocate the entire office staff. Ed and Ahmad's team did amazing work. And we're just really grateful to Janet and her team at Donlin for rolling with the punches on that one. Anybody else want to say hi?
This is Mike O'Brien from Vintage Hills. I thank you so much. I just want to say none of us could have done it without the camaraderie, support, and fellowship that the admin have held with each other and supported each other up through all this. And so my gratitude is to all my admin colleagues who have been amazing individuals, and we've all helped each other through this too. So
absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Karen. I can't I would just say I echo what Mike said completely. This has been a crazy but amazing year, and my peers have been just fabulous to work with. So thank you so much, everybody.
Very good. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, this is Julie Berglund from Moore Elementary, and I just want to acknowledge this amazing admin team, also the support we've received from leadership. We appreciate you, and also our teachers and the amazing parent community. They have really rallied and provided things that we could not imagine. So I'm just really grateful to be part of PUSD. Thank you.
Good deal. I don't know if there's anybody else out there that wants to jump in.
This is Sebastian Bull, principal at Foothill. I just wanted to say thank you very much. I want to extend my appreciation because we wouldn't be able to survive this year without obviously the teachers, as Julie mentioned, but also the support staff, the custodial staff, office staff, paraeducators, CNS staff, the bus drivers, all those people. Like there's no way we could have made it through this year without all of them. So it's really, they should be the ones that should be celebrated, and we're here just for the ride and hopefully steer the ship in the right direction. So thank you.
We've got 2 resolutions on the agenda that'll do just that tonight, Sebastian. So thank you for bringing it up. Anybody else?
This is Joe Wynn from Pleasanton Middle School. Really well said to all my colleagues. And I cannot wait whenever we can get back to live meetings to be able to high five all of our teachers, staff, colleagues. I can't wait for live principal meetings, yes, so we can hug each other. Yes, I said that.
There's something wrong with you, Joe. I'm not. Thank you so much, Joe. Anybody else want to jump in? All right, hearing none. Thank you, President Larson. Those are our recognitions.
We were just talking about how every year, those of us in education and teachers especially, I know, it's like this time of the year, it just goes faster and faster and faster and faster. And even though we're having to do things virtual, it still feels that way. It's like everything's jam-packed and we really have a lot to say, but it's like, oh my gosh, we're just running as fast as we can. So we'll continue on, and we do have some resolutions tonight we will be sharing with the community as well. We're going to move on now to item 7, which is our representatives from our associations. So first tonight, we have the California School Employees Association, Mr. Derek Pizarros.
Good evening. You guys hear me okay?
A little quiet.
Oh, a little quiet? Let me see what I can do about that. How about that? Better?
Yeah, speak up.
All right. Good evening, Superintendent Haglund, trustees, Pleasanton leadership, staff, and community. As David mentioned, there's light coming at the end of the tunnel, sun's out, summer's coming. This is making me optimistic for fall as we round the last corner in what feels like a generationally long marathon of a school year. So tomorrow's Friday, first of the last 4 of the instructional calendar. And it was brought to my attention by the director and coordinator of Child Nutrition Services. Tomorrow is also the 8th annual School Lunch Hero Day. As such, I'm using my time this evening to ask the Pleasanton community to extend some gratitude to our meal service staff tomorrow. I'm not going to drag out the emotional string music and remind the audience of the work conditions, humble compensation, or endurance of our staff over the last year. Instead, I'd ask you to practice what I consider true gratitude tomorrow. When you engage a student, or when you students engage each other, give a thought to how many of our community received a meal from a Pleasanton employee. Just give a little mental acknowledgement of what they did to prepare that meal, what environment they performed this duty in, and how many others were working alongside them when things were at their worst, because there were very few. Take a minute to think about that, and I hope you are as thankful as I am that these people were here to fill bellies, sometimes engaging in the only other human contact a student or their family had outside their home that day. What you do with that gratitude is up to you. I have some ideas, but I wanted to start with this public expression of thanks. And thank you, Mary Fell, Kelsey Perouse, and your classified CNS staff for your support and leadership, and for bringing this opportunity for acknowledgement to my attention. Have a great evening.
Thank you for those comments. And now from the Association of Pleasanton Teachers, Ms. Michelle Verkeilen.
Good evening, President Larson, members of the board, Dr. Haglund, members of the cabinet, and our community. I am Michelle Verkeilen, president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. Congratulations to Russell, our Teacher of the Year, and all the Teacher of the Year nominees. You embody the best of us, and we are so appreciative of how you highlight the good work we do. Congratulations again. A thank you to all our site admin who have worked the long and extra hours with us this year, and we are ever so grateful to those who have lifted us up and carried us through such a challenging year. Huge shout out to PPIE and all those supporting PPIE. They wrapped up another successful PPIE run virtually again this year. We are very thankful for their continued support of the programs and needs that we all hold near and dear to our hearts. This week and next, depending on whose calendar you use, is Teacher Appreciation Week and School Nurses Appreciation Day. I think we can all easily state more than ever before the incredible value of our educators and school nurses. The pandemic laid bare for us the utmost importance of the jobs our APT union members do. Our members have had to completely redesign the work they do, and they have done so with shiny stars and flying colors. They not only adapted, but were creative in their undertaking by making sure necessary materials were sent home during our remote learning time so that our students could continue to engage in necessary hands-on learning, augmented by engaging, accessible online lessons. Our educators spent oodles of their own personal hours, days, weeks, learning to use online tools that would streamline accessibility and make remote learning fun for their students. They met their students not only for academics, but for social emotional support. Our nurses spent loads of personal hours attending pandemic-related health meetings so that they could help create and support the measures needed to ensure a safe return to in-person. All our members have and continue to engage remotely and in person, while families have made their choices about how to spend the rest of this school year. All members of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers do this each and every day they spend with our students. They are truly phenomenal, and I am so proud to represent them. Part of Pleasanton Unified's organizational work plan is to enhance employee recruitment, development, and retention strategies. And part of Pleasanton Unified's strategic plan is a belief in ensuring a culture and climate that promotes a highly skilled, dedicated, and passionate educational team. Part of how Pleasanton Unified achieves this is by working collaboratively with their employees. Part of what has made Pleasanton Unified special is that our work, knowledge, and expertise has been valued. In the past, we have always been asked to the table, whether it was for program changes, schedule changes, or engaging in negotiations. And it wasn't because management had to. It was because they truly valued those they had hired and trusted our years of experience and higher education credentials. People came to our district to be a part of that. We do have the expertise, and we do expect a seat at the table when things impact the learning of our students and their learning environments, which is our working environments. We provide high-end educational experiences for our students, and we expect a voice, a partnership, and a fair return for that work. We are the experts in our fields. We have the children's hearts and minds at the forefront of all that we do. Please listen to the elementary educators who have reached out to you and will speak to you tonight about the proposed changes to student instructional minutes. We are all in agreement, and always have been, that minutes should be aligned. But how and why is a deeper discussion that is best left to our teachers who are on the front lines in the classroom. Please do not make hasty changes at the end of a year with endless changes without true collaboration from your experts. There will be unintended consequences because we have not been able to fully engage in a discussion of these changes. Our teachers hold the institutional history of the how and why things are. They hold the desire to build off of that into further success for our students. But if changes are made too quickly, losses for our pupils will occur. Programs and things that make Pleasanton unique and beneficial will be lost. Be careful about leaping forward without bringing your experts together to make a well thought out decision that doesn't move some of our students backwards. Please continue to ensure a culture and climate that promotes a highly skilled, dedicated, and passionate educational team. That means listening and including their expertise when making critical changes. This supports people in making decisions to stay with Pleasanton Unified School District. To date, we only have one 3-hour bargaining session on the books for May. The APT team is committed to being available whenever the management team is before the end of the school year. We made our goal clear to have something in place by year's end, and we have put in a great amount of effort and work to provide timely and well thought out proposals that benefit PUSD's goals and our students. Surrounding districts have come together. Surrounding districts have sought out their union partners to provide them with a fair return for their work and stellar working conditions. What's best for students is that our educators can concentrate on getting a new school year off to a fabulous start and not have another year of a carryover bargain. Help us make this happen for them. We look forward to a timely and speedy agreement with the management team. We support our students because Pleasanton students deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Now we'll move on to public comment from the community. Mr. Gannon, do we have anyone for the not on the agenda items?
We do not, President Larson.
Thank you. And then we'll welcome back to the camera Mr. Brian Glasgow, our student board member from Village High School.
Thank you for having me again. Hello, my name is Brian Glasgow, and I'm a graduating senior at Village High School. Since the last board meeting, we have finished the first semester. 13 students graduated early at the end of the semester, and we have also gained 20 new students since the semester started. In leadership class, we have distributed 8 editions of our weekly student newsletter, which includes the schedule for the week and important events, birthdays, trivia, competitions, and even links to mindfulness. In Culinary, we have started to work outdoors in our school garden and have been cleaning it up to prepare for planting vegetables and flowers. This week, we have also started to cook under the current COVID guidelines and made ice cream as our first lab. The most popular flavors were banana chili mango and maple bacon. In math, we are using Edgenuity to learn at our own pace. Students have been learning about parallel lines in geometry and are able to receive RTI based on how we are doing on Edgenuity. In advanced composition, students have been reading Kurt Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle. The book explores science and religion as 2 complementary paths to knowledge. We've been looking at science as a method of inquiry that investigates how the world works in an effort to understand and improve human life, and spirituality as a means of knowing that addresses larger why questions about the meaning of human life and ethical questions about what we should be using science to accomplish. In junior English, students have been reading James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time and discussing how an honest understanding of the past, however difficult it might prove to be, is necessary to contextualize the present and to authentically and consciously shape the future. We also have been reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and discussing the ways in which society defines mental health and the ways in which the power dynamics in a particular era and culture influence that definition. In econ, we have been looking at stocks, managing car loans, and household finances while analyzing the housing crisis in the Bay Area. In world history, we're currently learning about World War I and its lasting impacts on Europe, the rest of the world, and how the US got involved. In art, we have been exploring different artists and the difference in their uses of artistic mediums. We have explored collage, watercolor, and drawing while looking at the artists Paul Klee, Georgia O'Keeffe, and Henry Matisse. In ceramics, students have been continuing to learn about the different hand building methods, coil, slab, and pinch. They have made coil bowls and plates, slab boxes, as well as pinch paint palettes. In literature and social justice, we are reading Man's Search for Meaning and exploring existential philosophy. In African American literature, we are studying the origins of hip hop, including Grandmaster Flash, Africa Bambaataa, and Rakim. In an upcoming project, we will be comparing how hip hop has evolved over generations. In college and career readiness, we are talking about the value of having good credit and how to manage debt. Additionally, we will analyze the reality or what it would cost to own our dream car. In US history, students are incorporating visual art to express their knowledge and understanding of World War II and Hitler. Students in physical science have been tackling a space colonization project. They have been tasked with establishing a new home, habitats out of man-made ecosystems, somewhere else in our solar system. The moon and Mars have been popular choices, of course, but students have also looked into options like Venus, the dwarf planet Ceres, and a few of the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, with students researching Titan, Europa, Io, Callisto, and Ganymede. Probably butchered those.
Ganymede is fine.
Students are tackling the problems that humans will have to address if we have ever hoped to be multiplanetary species. In health class, students are learning about tobacco use and the hazards of smoking. Resource math class is learning how to factor trinomials. In PE, we have been learning about basketball skills, including passing, shooting, and tossing, the basketball and volleyball skills, such as how to execute an underhand serve by watching our teacher and by uploading our own videos on Flipgrid. Next, students will be learning about golf skills. In advisory, we have been focusing on catching up on our schoolwork during student support time, where we can ask our teachers questions or get extra help on any assignments. On Fridays, we have had several guest speakers that have present topics on social media safety, CTE courses, and self-care. This week, we are completing math and English map testing to help collect data to drive instruction for the next school year. Study hall is being held on Wednesdays during our asynchronous learning time, so we can meet with a teacher and be accountable for getting our work done. Currently, our next big event is our 2021 village graduation. We have 30 students on track to graduate, and we are planning on having our ceremony on the upper play field above Village High School on May 26th at 10 a.m. So far, we are planning to have balloon arches, decorations, and messages from graduates to help celebrate all of the hardworking seniors who made it. I would like to add a congratulations to Sato. He is one of, if not the most deserving of this award for all that he does for Village and the students and staff. Just earlier today, we were talking, and he said that there are only 2 times he will bug a student. 1, making sure that they are on track to graduate, and 2, if he genuinely misses their presence in the class. He then said something that really made me feel wanted. He said, "I miss your voice in the class, Brian." We all appreciate you, Sato. We had a guest speaker come on our Zoom meeting to talk about CTE paths and the many different career choices besides just going to college. Personally, I had never heard about them before. The major one that Village provides is a culinary, which can put you down the path of cooking. With graduation coming up faster than I had ever imagined, I wanted to end this just by saying thank you to those who refuse to give up on students and help us achieve success in life. You mean a lot. Thank you.
That was wonderful. I really want to commend you for painting a lovely picture of what the daily, what the dailiness is, what's actually happening in the classroom. And we don't often get that from the report. Sometimes it's very high level list of activities, but I really felt like I got to hear, what you guys are really doing and daily in the classroom. But I would ask if any of the board members have any questions for Brian tonight. Okay, no questions. Brian, if you, want to stick around, and if you want to make comment on any of the items on the agenda, just, pop in and raise a hand, if you will. Otherwise, of course, as always, our students usually have other things to do too, and you're free to go do your homework if necessary. But of course, we would love to have any of the comments that you might want to make on any of the items on our agenda tonight. Thank you so much.
I have to go write a graduation speech.
We can't wait to hear that too. Thank you so much, Brian. All right, on to item number 10, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Larson. As I said earlier, for the first time in a long time, we're seeing light on the horizon. As we head into the final weeks of the school year, it is important for each of us to take a moment to reflect on how far we've come together. Earlier this evening, we recognized Russell Sato as our Teacher of the Year, who serves as one example of the remarkable caliber of educators we are blessed to have in our schools. As a fellow continuation high school teacher of 13 years, Russell, I appreciated your words tonight, as well as your passion for student learning and student wellness that I've witnessed when I visited your room. Congratulations, Russell. We're proud of your work at Village and pleased to have you represent us in the county competition. Tonight we're celebrating, or actually this week we've been celebrating an amazing team of educators as part of Teacher Appreciation Week. Not to be outdone, our parent groups have also been sharing the love at the school sites by dropping in and bringing all kinds of fun gifts, meals, and other forms of encouragement. I would like to encourage everyone who hasn't done so yet to reach out to a current or former teacher who's made a difference in your life or the life of a child, and just say thank you. It would mean the world to them, just as they mean the world to us. Later this month, we will celebrate our classified employees who have made similar sacrifices this year and showed similar strength and commitment during this incredible experience that we've had together. I encourage you to reach out to our classified staff members as well to share a word of thanks and our encouragement. They truly have been our rock stars this year. Finally, we are thrilled to close the school year by celebrating the senior class of 2021, as well as the rising class of 2025, with in-person graduation promotion ceremonies. Can we just applaud that right now? Next week, we will join with the parents of our senior class to line Main Street once again with purple, blue, and gold ribbons as a symbol of our PUSD pride, and more importantly, to recognize each 2021 graduate. While I may not have the chance to shake each graduate's hand, and people who know me well know how much that tradition means to me, I'm grateful for this step in the right direction. I look forward to the opportunity to celebrate this important milestone with our school communities in a few short weeks. We're really proud of you for what you've been through and what you've accomplished despite of what you've been through, class of 2021. Thank you for making us proud. Now go out and continue that in your next phase. Thank you. That's my comments for tonight.
You know, in-person graduation. So exciting. Okay, makes the consent agenda seem very, very, very small. So these are items we pass normally on they're routine items that we pass with one vote, but if anybody has anything they'd like to pull off to discuss, Mary Jo?
I would like to discuss 11.4, please.
Anyone else? All right. Would you like to make a motion to approve without that one?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the consent except for 11.4.
I'll second it.
All right. Trustee Carrion?
So it's actually a budget.
Sorry, I was going to ask you to, for your vote on your motion.
Aye.
Thank you. Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. All right. 11.4. Go for it.
It's actually a budget question. And so it's my understanding that we've lost 400 students this year and that we're held harmless next year. But the year after that, 22, 23, we may potentially have to cut up to millions of dollars. I want to just see if my math is correct. And so my question regarding this is it says that it's through the grant through August 22. And so I want to make sure that it's not automatically put in the budget. I want to make sure that if we don't have the money, that we could make that decision in 2022.
Correct. This position is going to be funded from the grant dollars. Now we have several different grants, and they have different time parameters on them. And so I think we're going to evaluate it on a year-by-year basis and see where we are. And you're also correct that next fiscal year we're held harmless on our funding based on the 1920 average daily attendance. And then going into 22, 23, then that as of right now, that will be removed. And so we'll be our funding will be based on what our attendance is at that time.
Okay, so is it a temporary position for 2 years, Mr. Hernandez?
So it's being paid through temporary dollars for sure. As far as the grant money disappears, again, we will evaluate the position, the need at that time, and then either recommend to continue or not, based on the fact that we know at that time. But for sure, the dollars will expire. They would have to go into either another grant or the general fund, should we recommend this position to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just for the benefit of the public's context for that position, could you maybe explain the benefit for this particular position and why it's being slated? Just to give context.
Mr. D'Alonzo, will you assist?
Yeah, so later in the agenda, we're going to be talking about our recommendations for plans of how to expense that grant. And I think you'll find a lot of the activities, the items, possible staffing positions, it's going to need some coordination of putting that together. So we came up with this proposal of a position to assist our director, where this position would live under the Director of Educational Options, to really help coordinate all the different programs that we're bringing to the district. So that's our intent.
So just to restate what you're saying, that this position will help with the extended, the grant for extended learning support that we're going to be talking about later on the agenda, and that this position will have a very significant role on executing some of the items on that grant, and that over-encompassing role will really support that, correct?
Yes, Trustee Mikashi, absolutely.
Are there any other questions on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve 11.4.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the new job description for Coordinator of Summer Programs, Intersession, and Extended Learning. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. Thank you. And that's it for the consent. Now we'll move on to items for report, discussion, and possible action. 12.1 is report, discussion, and possible action on Resolution 2020-2021.26 to recognize Teacher Appreciation Week, which is May 3rd through 7th, and Day of the Teacher, May 4th. Dr. Hagelin.
Thank you very much. Our first resolution tonight, 12.1, is for the Teacher Appreciation Week and Day of the Teacher. And as is our collective habit, we read these resolutions as a way to, in the public record, acknowledge the great work that our team members are doing. And so we're going to start with this one. I think I'll start this time, and then we'll go around from the dais down to the cabinet, if that's okay. So hopefully everybody's got a resolution up. Resolution number 2020-2021.26, Teacher Appreciation Week, May 3rd through the 7th this week, and Day of the Teacher, May 4th. Whereas the week of May 3rd through the 7th, 2021 has been designated as Teacher Appreciation Week and Day of the Teacher, May 4th, 2021, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers mold and guide future citizens through patience, hard work, and positive example, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers are responsible for educating and encouraging students to become the next generation of inventors, entrepreneurs, public officials, first responders, professionals, and service providers so that our community continues to grow and flourish, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers encounter students of widely differing backgrounds and support them all equitably with compassion, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers help build the country's future by providing quality education to all students, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating student work, counseling and coaching, and performing community service, and
Whereas Pleasanton teachers, counselors, nurses, librarians, psychologists, and speech and language pathologists and other certificated staff continue to contribute to the well-being of our local community and the entire state, and
Whereas Pleasanton recognizes and supports its teachers in educating the children of the community, and
Whereas Pleasanton Unified School District acknowledges the challenges faced by our educators, staff, students, and families during the current unprecedented global pandemic that calls on schools and to provide student instruction through distance learning, and
Whereas the Pleasanton Unified School District is fortunate to have a team of skilled educators who have taken on the role of essential workers, making it possible for students to continue to learn during this uncertain time, and
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Pleasanton Unified School District's Board of Trustees does hereby recognize Teacher Appreciation Week, May 3rd through the 7th, 2021, and Day of the Teacher, May 4th, 2021.
I like reading those. It's more meaningful, and and expresses. I mean, I think I can hear it in everybody's voices, the appreciation. So with that, I'll seek a motion to approve this resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve Resolution 2020-2021.26 to recognize Teacher Appreciation Week, May 3rd through 7th, 2021, and Day of the Teacher, May 4th, 2021. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Enthusiastic, aye.
And Larson, aye as well. Thank you very much. That passes unanimously. 12.2 is similar to 12.1, and we're expressing appreciation. It's report, discussion, and possible action on Resolution 2020-2021.27 to recognize Classified School Employee Week, May 17th through 21st, 2021. Dr. Hagelin?
all right, so here we go again. This time, we're going to celebrate our classified staff members, who we all know have knocked it out of the park this year. So, whereas the week of May 17th through May 21st, 2021 has been designated as Classified School Employees Week, and
whereas classified employees provide critical services to the schools and students of the Pleasanton Unified School District, and
Whereas classified employees serve the students, staff, parents, and citizens of the district by providing essential services in the educational system, and
whereas classified employees support and enhance the educational process by assisting students and teachers, transporting students, preparing nutritional meals, maintaining building and grounds, and performing technical, business, clerical, and secretarial functions, and
whereas classified employees go above and beyond to support the implementation of new standards and assessments in order to prepare our students for the 21st century, and
whereas classified employees employed by the Pleasanton Unified School District strive for excellence in all areas relative to the educational community, and
Whereas the Pleasanton Unified School District further acknowledges the challenges faced by our educators, staff, students, and families during the current unprecedented global pandemic that called on schools to provide student instruction through distance learning, and
Whereas the Pleasanton Unified School District is fortunate to have a team of skilled staff who have taken on the role of essential workers, making it possible for students to continue to learn during this uncertain time.
Therefore, be it resolved that the Pleasanton Unified School District hereby recognizes and wishes to honor the contribution of the classified professionals to quality education in the state of California and the Pleasanton Unified School District, and declares the week of May 17th to the 21st, 2021 as Classified School Employees Week in the Pleasanton Unified School District.
Be it further resolved that all community members are encouraged to thank a classified member who has had a positive influence in their life.
thank you. We've read the resolution. I'll seek a motion to approve Resolution 2020-2021.27 to recognize Classified School Employee Week, May 17th through the 21st.
I'll make a motion to approve this resolution.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution. Trustee Carrion?
aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Miller?
equally enthusiastic, aye.
Larson, aye. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's an emotional year, honestly. We've been through a lot together, and all of our employees have done an amazing job, and just really grateful for the teamwork and for the collaboration that we've seen this year. All right, so we earlier, for those of you just tuning in, have moved agenda item 12.5 up to this position on the agenda. So now we're going to discuss and take possible action on the elementary instructional minutes, and this is the second reading of this. Dr. Woodward or Dr. Hagland's going to take it?
Dr. Woodward.
Good evening, President Larson, Superintendent Hagland, trustees, cabinet, and Pleasanton community. Item 12.5 is a report, discussion, and possible action on the elementary alignment of instructional minutes. For context, last year, pre-pandemic, we started taking a closer look at the range and discrepancies between elementary sites for each respective grade level across the district. Additional movement on aligning minutes was then disrupted due to the sudden shift to remote learning. When it became apparent that our students would indeed be able to return to school in the fall in person, we began the planning and process for alignment that we bring to the trustees this evening. I also want to reiterate that the district is not mandating any specific schedule per se, but what we are recommending is standardizing the annual minutes at each elementary grade level. I will now turn it over to Elementary Director Galletti to take it from here.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. I will start by sharing my screen in the presentation. Good evening, President Larson, Dr. Hagland, Board of Trustees, Cabinet, and the community. This evening, I'm presenting the second part of the elementary instructional minutes review. At our last board meeting in March, I provided an overview and analysis of our 9 elementary schools' yearly instructional minutes by grade level. Building off that first presentation, tonight we will begin by understanding the reason for aligning student instructional minutes by grade level. We will review the pre-pandemic yearly minutes, and lastly, I will provide an overview of the process used to determine the final recommendation. When we reviewed each school's schedules, it became clear that there was a wide range of minutes across the 9 schools. We determined that in order to follow Ed Code, districts must maintain all of the elementary schools have an equal length of time. The next 2 slides were part of the March presentation. As you look down the columns for TK kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, you can see the range in yearly instructional minutes. If you recall, the range in kindergarten equated to approximately 24 more school days, and the range in first and second grades equated to approximately 22 more school days. Moving to 3rd through 5th grade, the discrepancy in time is less and are due to variations in length of time for recess and lunch. In order to gather teacher input on alignment of instructional minutes, principals shared an overall analysis of minutes per school and sample schedules. Teacher input meetings were held at each of the 9 elementary schools, and an additional makeup session was held for teachers who were not able to attend their school session. The input sessions gave teachers the opportunity to provide positives and the challenges to aligning the minutes, as well as give insights on instructional practices. To collect individual staff feedback, a Google survey was used. I would like to dive deeper into the data gathered from the survey and feedback sessions. Within the survey, respondents were asked to provide input on sample schedules that extended the student instructional time for TK and K, eliminated staggered for first and second grade, and decreased the lunch in upper grades from 55 minutes to 45. Looking at the top of the chart, the first column of data shows the total number of respondents and then breaks down the number of respondents by grade level and shows the percentage of the respondents per grade level. The second column of data first shows the total of elementary certificated staff. The numbers below this represent the numbers of teachers per grade level. The bottom row shows the number of respondents that fit into other educational roles outside of the classroom teachers. This total fluctuates depending on the role of the itinerant staff member. Using a Likert scale, staff were asked to rate their comfortableness in increasing instructional minutes by extending the instructional time for TK and K, eliminating staggered and shortening lunch. In reviewing a sample schedule with a late start Wednesday, you can see that a higher percentage of respondents for each grade level rated their comfortableness as neutral to very comfortable. The same Likert scale was used to ask staff the same question, having increased instructional time, but with an early release Wednesday. In this table, you can see the percentage of 2nd through 5th grade respondents was higher for feeling neutral to very comfortable, whereas K and 1st grade respondents were higher percentage for feeling uncomfortable to very uncomfortable. There were 3 themes that emerged from the feedback provided by teachers at the site-based sessions and on the open responses of the Google survey. The themes were staggered scheduled for K2, aligning instructional minutes, and social emotional learning. It is important to note that the themes and information shared on this slide came directly from teacher responses. In starting with the staggered theme, the pros of staggered included the importance of small group instruction to target student needs, and staggered being a crucial time for literacy instruction. Continuing staggered in first and extending the staggered time in K was also prevalent. Cons of staggered shared by teachers included that the afternoon time is not always as effective due to student fatigue, and teaching the literacy block twice equates to less minutes to cover other instruction. Moving to the next theme, alignment of instruction minutes, there was a strong understanding for the why to align the minutes and providing equity and consistency of instructional minutes across the district. Specialists also gave feedback that to have each lunch period for the lower and upper grades at 45 minutes assists in scheduling. Cons for aligning time focused heavily on reviewing the quality of instruction over the quantity of instruction and being able to address the site-specific needs. The last theme, social emotional learning, or for short, SEL, teachers were concerned about losing playtime and social interaction for students, but also expressed that gaining time could allow for dedicated instruction in SEL. As an additional lens, we reviewed surrounding districts' instructional minutes to determine local contexts. Each of the districts shown exceed the state minimum. There is also a range between kindergarten to 5th grade minutes, and 3 of the 4 districts shown have consistent minutes yearly by grade level. Moving on, I would like to provide an overview of the criteria used to make the recommendation. The minutes set forth in Ed Code were used as a baseline. In analyzing our past instructional minutes, we looked at the range and average across the sites. Considerations were given for the number of schools that would have to significantly increase or decrease time. And importantly, teacher input and survey data was taken into consideration, along with the average trends of the local districts. This slide shows the recommended minutes per grade level. It is important to note that for each of our 9 elementary schools, the daily bell schedules might vary, but the minutes that are calculated by the end of the year all need to be the same. An example of this might be a school that starts and ends 5 minutes earlier to ease the traffic patterns for neighboring middle or high schools. In addition, the minutes at TK and K and 1st grade do allow schools to plan a modified staggered schedule. To illustrate options for a modified staggered, schools are able to adjust recess and/or lunchtime to allow for it. Another consideration given was a partial year staggered and transition to end of the year full day. In addition, for all grade levels, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant can be utilized to fund additional small group lessons before or after school. Finally, to discuss next steps in the process, school site administration will determine the bell schedules with input from the staff. This will be done over the next coming weeks so that information about next year's bell schedules can be shared with the school's communities. It is important to note again that daily schedules may vary by school site, but the total yearly minutes for students will be consistent throughout the district by grade level. Thank you, and I now open it up for questions and we'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Shay. As is our process, after the staff's presentation, we'll take questions from the board and then public comment, and then more questions or comments from the board and prior to taking any possible action. So do any trustees have questions for Director Galletti? Go ahead.
I have one question. I didn't send this in beforehand, because I just missed it. But I guess it's a quick question. The recommended instructional minutes on page 13 are, for the most part, actually higher than any of the other surrounding districts that we have on page 11, which is great in a sense. But any comments as to why that was decided?
Sure, Director Galletti, I'll go ahead and I'll take that and you can jump in. When we looked at where many of our schools already were, we realized that to do a significant decrease would then put those schools at that disadvantage. So we definitely considered all of those factors in making that decision, along with the comparison of other districts.
So we would have decreased in some cases had
Yes.
we... Okay, got it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, don't want to...
Interesting. I have a question, and I didn't ask it before, I apologize. But I'm basing this question on the thousands of emails that we received from fifth grade students at Hearst Elementary. Thank you so much.
That might be an exaggeration.
Okay, slightly. I guess I don't know how to do the math. So the conversation about making adjustments to lunch schedules and or recess schedules, that would mean that there would be additional student-teacher contact time, so teachers would be working that time with students. Has there been consideration to not adjusting recess, but just taking the 10 minutes and making the day 10 minutes longer?
So our presentation is really not as concerned with the length of their recesses or lunches as it is on aligning the minutes. So that is absolutely an option that would exist at the site level. What I will say is that those emails were a great example of how our teachers know the fifth grade writing standards for the California standards.
Absolutely.
And have taught their students very, very well how to read text from a publication in the city and then respond in an articulate, organized manner that cites evidence. So kudos to those kids for doing such a great job and the teachers for engaging in that. But there is some flexibility at the site level for them.
So we could, that's a possibility to do that, so where they wouldn't necessarily need to reduce recess and or lunch. We could extend the day in order to accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Does that need to be negotiated?
Great question, President Larson. So Article 4.1.1 in our collective bargaining agreement does allow for the principals to establish the bell schedules and schedules at the school site with cooperation and input from the sites. Here's where what all of these are possibilities, including staggered. That needs to be developed as we've established already in the negotiating table at the site level. The interest is that we have the same, if it's 10 minutes at Hearst, it should be 10 minutes at LSL in correcting that disparity. What works at the site level is really important for our site leaders as well as our staff to be able to develop a bell schedule that works for them, and it also works for our transportation as well as for our meals program. So it is a Sudoku that needs to be developed at the sites. That has been our practice and will continue to be so. That has already been negotiated.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So in this proposal, then we could have stagger at one school site and not staggered at another school site. Nobody can hear you shaking your head.
I can answer that. That is correct. And again, the importance is that the minutes, as you add them up over the course of the year, that the students are receiving the same yearly minutes.
And so who makes the decision about whether or not they're staggered at a particular school site or not?
The principal sets the bell schedule and has input from the staff on setting that schedule for the specific school site's needs.
So we would not be, you're not asking us to approve a specific plan for how this would look at each school site. What you're asking us tonight is to align the minutes per ed code across our grade levels in our school district.
That is correct, President Larson.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Trustee Carrion?
So my question, I'm just going to start with first grade. It was my understanding that 8 out of the 9 schools had staggered schedules in first grade. And so I'm wondering why we didn't go back to all of them being staggered for 45 minutes.
As we just discussed, the sites have the option of doing that, and then that would have been mandating a specific bell schedule for that one site. And that, per the CBA, that the principal determines that with input from the staff. In addition, we did feel it was important to increase the amount of instructional time for our first grade students.
Okay, but I haven't seen a sample schedule. So does that mean that one school would be working longer days if they have staggered? Would they be?
Director Gilletti, I know you've looked carefully at that. Would you like to respond? And then I can take a shot as well.
Yeah, not necessarily. And I'll just share ideas that came actually from the teachers. For example, I had mentioned in the presentation, one of the ideas was to have staggered the first trimester and second trimester, and then transition the first graders into what we would consider a full day, for example, ending at 2:50 as they're getting ready for second grade. So that's one example of how it could vary from sites. If you notice, the minutes in first grade are less than the other grade levels. And so a school could also look at doing a shorter staggered time during the same amount of what was traditionally considered 8:15 to 2:50.
Right, but I have a problem with second grade because as a second grade teacher, I love staggered reading, and I see this as a problem. I would love to have seen that schedule that you just mentioned for second grade as a possibility.
So for second grade, the reason was decided 4 of the 5 schools were not staggering. And that means that 4 of the schools would have to significantly decrease their minutes, whereas, as you just mentioned, 8 of the first grades. In addition, in looking at the survey data, the respondents had a high percentage being neutral to comfortable with increasing minutes. So the data that I captured did not have strong support as it did for the first grade in keeping staggered.
I have a lot of comments, but I'll wait till after the speakers.
I just have one question, and this is really for the benefit of the public. I would just like it to be restated or reclarified. Why does the staggered schedule not count for instructional minutes? What is the problem with the current staggered schedule? Just so the public has the context for that framework.
Yeah, so for a student, for a staggered schedule, it only counts for when they're in school. So if the school day for a teacher is 8:15 to 2:50, all of those minutes wouldn't count for a student if they go home at 1:55, meaning they're on a staggered schedule. For example, they go 8:15 to 1:55. The second group of students, let's say, go 9 o'clock to 2:50, that's when their instructional time would count, not the actual full school day as a 5th grade student, for example, who was going 8:15 to 2:50. And I'm using times as samples here. Also, please note that in first grade through 5th grade, lunch and recess time is not counted per ed code as part of instructional minutes for students.
So just to rephrase in a different way, what you're saying is that, so if half the class is doing, in my children's school, early bird schedule, that time does not count because not all the students are present. Is that another way it could be stated?
Yes, it would
only
only
half
count
the
for
class.
students who are, it would only count for the half of the class that was there.
Okay, so that's where the kind of the chord is being struck in terms of the current staggered schedule. So just to re-clarify, typically that time for the staggered schedule is spent for reading and working with students in small groups, or what else? Just to recapture how that time currently is being used.
Many of our teachers use a workshop model and use small grouping during that time. It is important to note that small grouping happens throughout a school day, and it's considered flexible grouping and very responsive to student needs. And small grouping also happens in our larger class sizes of 33 for 4th and 5th grade.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. But I guess my question is, it's currently primarily focused for reading, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I have other comments, but I'll wait for public comment later. So thank you for those clarifications. I really think it's important to give context for the conversation. Thank you.
Trustee Maher, you look like you have something to say.
I was just going to clarification, Shay. I think to answer Trustee McCaughey's question, it was not teacher contact with students, but students contact with a teacher.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
All right, Mr. Gannon, I think we'll go ahead and take public comment.
All right.
I'm sorry, just as a reminder, speakers, you have 2 minutes, and then we will ask you to wrap up your comment.
Thank you, President Larson. So first up, we have Iris Bellinson, followed by Aaron Salcido, and then Cheryl Atkins. Iris, go ahead.
Good evening, school board members and Pleasanton community. My name is Iris Bellinson, and I've had the pleasure of teaching in Pleasanton for over 25 years. I'm speaking to you tonight in regards to my concerns regarding the proposal for the change in our elementary minutes. Please be aware that this schedule does not take in consideration the best interests of our first grade students, since it does not automatically include a staggered schedule in first grade. Being afforded a ratio of 12:1 has so many benefits to the foundational skills of our first grade readers. During our staggered instruction, we teach guided reading, phonemic awareness, and phonics skill. In addition, we are providing targeted, direct instruction in an environment that is developmentally appropriate and most beneficial to our first grade students. With a ratio of 12:1, we can also narrow the achievement gap with all our students regardless of each student's needs. Within our first grade classrooms, our students can come in at a reading level A, and by the end of the year, they need to be at a level J. That can be up to 10 levels that a first grader will have to move through in order to be at grade level by the end of the school year. First grade is the only grade level that has benchmarks to advance students through that many reading stages. Having a 12:1 ratio allows for us to work with the many levels within our classroom as an integral part of our reading curriculum. Furthermore, are you aware that there will be students coming into first grade who have had a full year of online learning? What better way to build a relationship and help in their emotional well-being by giving our students the gift of a ratio of 12:1 for 45 minutes a day, where he and she can get more individualized instruction and interaction with his or her teacher. Finally, please be aware that creating more school minutes does not equate to more teaching or better learning. Our little one's stamina for learning has a time limit, especially when we start school in early August. Please be the school board that brings back the professional courtesy of seeking teacher input regarding the importance of having a 12:1 ratio before making a final decision. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Aaron Salcido, followed by Cheryl Atkins, and then Linda Stanford.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, members of the Cabinet, Pleasanton community, and my fellow colleagues. My name is Erin Salcido, and I have been a first grade teacher at Alisal Elementary for the last 21 years. I am here this evening to speak to you about the importance of keeping a staggered schedule for the younger learners. Since 2013, I have been teaching my first graders reading, phonics, and phonemic awareness skills during a 45-minute staggered instruction. All of my students have benefited from having a smaller class size ratio of 12:1, less noise and less distraction. A 12:1 ratio has also allowed me to implement Tier 2 interventions and narrow the achievement gap for all students, from the EL learners to the high flyers. Through this flexible model of learning, my students have met the district's reading benchmark for each trimester, as well as gained the foundational literacy skills they needed to become successful readers. Again, are you aware that many first graders are coming into next year without ever being in a classroom? We are just starting to come out of a pandemic, and by providing first graders with a 45-minute small class environment that gives students academic confidence, stabilizes their social and emotional needs, and gives students more individualized instruction from their teacher. Unfortunately, the Teaching and Learning's proposal of aligning instructional minutes completely eliminates staggered instruction altogether and simply added more minutes to the school day. Adding more minutes does not equate to more learning, nor does it accelerate a child's learning by keeping them in school longer. Before making a final decision on this topic, please consider what is best for all students. Your decision to keep a 45-minute 12-to-1 ratio will continue to provide students an environment where they can be given quality reading instruction. Thank you.
All right, next we'll have Cheryl Atkins, followed by Linda Stanford, and then Ritu Kapoor.
Hello? Yes. Good evening, PUSD board members and cabinet. My name is Cheryl Atkins, and I'm a first grade teacher at Fairlands Elementary. I've been teaching first grade for more than 30 years. Tonight, you will be deciding to make a change to our instructional minutes for next year. I want to let you know what the proposed change actually looks like in the classroom and how it affects our current practices. A proposal was made to Teaching and Learning of how we could increase instructional minutes, but not completely dismantle our current schedule. I do appreciate that this proposal was taken into consideration and is in the slides being presented this evening. But I also want to express that this is a compromise and is not our first choice. The proposal adds 8 to 10 minutes of instructional minutes, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, for all students. And it takes away 8 to 10 minutes away from our current practices. At Fairlands, this means our intervention students will receive 10 minutes less intervention time every day. At other schools, students will lose 10 minutes of 12-to-1 instructional time with their teachers. We are trying to close the achievement gap, and I am asking you to consider if the gain of adding minutes outweighs what we are losing. I understand that the proposals being made are about aligning instructional minutes, not about programs, but it does affect the teaching practices, and we can align the instructional minutes. We can meet and exceed EdCode minutes and still keep our current schedules. When you hear that teachers were given a Google survey, please understand that the survey asked teachers to give input on an AM collaboration or a Wednesday PM collaboration. The actual schedules were the same and both eliminated our current schedules. Perhaps we need more time to make these all-important decisions, more time to collaborate and gather data across the district. Thank you for listening and making a thoughtful consideration.
All right, next we'll have Linda Stanford, followed by Ritu Kapoor, and then Jody Nunemacher.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, and the members of the Cabinet. My name is Linda Stanford, and I'm a first grade teacher at Moore School. In pre-pandemic times, the boardroom would most likely be filled with concerned teachers tonight, but circumstances are definitely different this evening. So my words have been carefully crafted to try and capture some of my colleagues' thoughts. Groups of first grade teachers have spent time outside of their workday to try and come up with various solutions to this proposal. Through collaboration and honest discussions, wonderful ideas happened. Outside of the box thinking occurred, all done with a genuine level of respect. We agree that coming to the table and having a collaborative conversation makes all the difference in the world. We also agree to have minutes across the district is part of EdCode and that we need to be in compliance. However, our concern was the process. It is appreciated that this proposal makes it clear that every site will develop and implement the proposed minutes in order to do what is best for their students, and with the possibility of creating ways to maintain some staggered reading. All of the first grade teachers are phenomenal, and we work very hard. We do what is right for students, and we will still continue to do what's right for students. I want to leave you with this wonderful analogy that was shared by my colleague, Linda Burry from Walnut Grove. Imagine you're given a dinner party. You've cooked a delicious meal. Your guests are enjoying themselves. You're busy making sure everyone is happy and everyone has what they need. Then some of your guests leave, and about half of the group is left. It is during this time that you are able to sit down and have a more meaningful conversation with your guests. This results in new thinking, deeper understanding of that person. This is what that 12-to-1 ratio in a staggered setting provides for our youngest learners. Thank you for your time.
All right, next we'll have Ritu Kapoor, followed by Jody Nunemacher, and then finally Beth Paddock.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, and members of the Cabinet. My name is Ritu Kapoor, and I'm a first grade teacher at Moore School. I would like to take these few minutes to discuss the research behind the lower class sizes. The class size ratio of 15-to-1 is the ideal number when discussing the impact of student learning with the lower class sizes. This has been documented in the Wisconsin study known as SAGE. This study has been ongoing for over 20 years. As recently as March of 2019, SAGE published that the impact of student success, especially with the students from the lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and the students in the achievement gap benefited greatly when in classroom with 15-to-1 ratio. This is what we have for free when schools are able to have flexibility with the staggered schedule. The 12-to-1 ratio, in some cases, 6-to-1 ratio allows for not just small groups, but tier 2 instruction, one-on-one instruction, and the development of social and emotional connection with our youngest learners. It's more than having time for the small groups. It allows for the flexibility to meet the many levels and needs of our first graders. Next year, we are going to have a little more than half of our first graders who have never been in the classroom. This is going to require even more attention to building relationships and ensuring students are comfortable in their learning environment. To have that 45 minutes, 12-to-1 ratio time that ensures all learners a smaller class size is such a free gift we can give to our first graders. I appreciate you listening, and thank you.
All right, next we'll have Jody Nunemacher and then Beth Paddock.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, and members of the Cabinet. My name is Jody Nunemacher, and I teach at Moore School in first grade. I really believe that when I look through the lens of the small class sizes, I actually see it as an opportunity we give to our youngest learners. We should honor this practice that is unique to Pleasanton and celebrate the success we have seen over the years. With this 12-to-1 ratio, we are able to quickly get started with assessments that we administer throughout the year in order to continuously determine student growth and needs, and at the same time build that important relationship with each student. We always have first graders who have not yet developed their reading skills and require that special one-on-one support and additional intervention. In a lower class size, these students are given that opportunity and support to gain not only reading skills, but more importantly, confidence. Smaller class size allows for individual attention and an environment that supports all learners in reading. Thank you for your time.
All right, and finally we'll have Beth Paddock.
Is Ms. Paddock with us?
She is. It looks like she might be having Beth. If you are able to take it.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Beth Paddock, and I'm currently a kindergarten teacher at Moore and a proud product of PUSD. I've been teaching for 27 years and am nationally board certified in the literacy development of young children. I've met with many kindergarten teachers who couldn't be here tonight, so I hope that I've captured their thoughts from our conversations. We know from many research studies conducted and from our own experience that smaller class sizes work. They result in increased student achievement, especially for traditionally disadvantaged students, stronger social emotional connections with teachers and peers, fewer retentions, fewer disciplinary actions, and fewer dropouts later in high school. Ideally, PUSD would have primary class sizes of 18 with a full-time paraprofessional to help, as many schools across our country do, but unfortunately that's not an option at this point. Instead, PUSD and other districts have been creative and have provided small class sizes for a portion of the day. This has been a wonderful opportunity for our students at no cost to the district. It's one of those things that makes PUSD special. When I have a small class of 12, I'm able to provide necessary individualized and targeted instruction for all learners. At Moore, kindergartners have been able to be in small classes for 80 minutes each day, and I truly believe that it has benefited every child. Kindergarten is about making connections, providing individual support, and knowing students as learners. It's more challenging to make those same connections in a room of 24. So I ask that you consider providing 80 minutes of uninterrupted small class time for all kindergarten students in PUSD. Thank you for your time.
All right, President Larson, that concludes public comment.
Great, thank you for your comments. That's the conclusion of public comment on this item at this time. Trustees had questions or comments? Mary Jo?
So I do see the need for the alignment and agree that it is necessary, but I do have some concerns, and at this time I will be unable to vote yes on this proposal. I'm going to seek a motion in just a minute, and my main motion is going to be to delay voting on this for 1 month because I believe that teachers and the district can work together to have equitable minutes without losing staggered reading. So here are my concerns. Number one, what we are really discussing is losing smaller class size. Like the last speaker just said, in a perfect world, we would have lower class size and we would have aides, but we don't have the funding for that. So many teachers have written and saying the quality of minutes is more important than the quantity of minutes. My second concern is mainly regarding first grade. I really am upset that 8 out of 9 schools pre-pandemic had 45 minutes of instruction and we're unilaterally getting rid of that. I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable with that. And reading is crucial. The research has said that they need to read by the end of 3rd grade. That is an important milestone. Studies show that 74% of 3rd graders who read poorly will struggle in 9th grade. And their 3rd grade reading scores can predict a student's likelihood to graduate high school. Some teachers, this is a really hot topic, some teachers feel more time is needed. Other teachers say smaller class size, but I do believe that teachers can come together, brainstorm solutions and options. We have done this in the past when we've had to, PE was a problem, they came together with class and a half. We had representatives every year come together for staggered reading. We didn't always agree, but we always came to a consensus. Teachers are exhausted and they just need to finish this year. I would like to suggest that after school gets out, have meetings with teachers in grade 1, have meetings with teachers in grade 2, and meetings in grade K. And I would like them to be able to come up with sample schedules. I would like them to be able to come up with things that would satisfy both of these important things. A teacher wrote, "Please be aware that your first grade teachers have not been invited to the table for such discussions. Instead, we were given a survey where there was no room for discussion or thought-provoking dialogue. Granted, the curriculum department did take the time to meet with the school. However, it was mainly a time for each of them to share a slide deck and were to answer questions on the pear deck. There was not a collaborative time, nor was there an opportunity for teachers to express their concerns regarding the removal of staggered instruction. Unfortunately, this has created an environment where schools are pitted against each other. Again, are we engaging our teachers? Are we informing? I really, really know that this is teacher appreciation, and I feel that if teachers feel that they are listened to and that they are heard, then they will be feeling morale and that they're feeling appreciated and they'll be able to prosper in this job. So again, after we have a conversation, I would like to propose us postponing this for a month. Thank you.
Mark, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so, okay, I just want to get back to clarification here. So what I am hearing is a strong desire to have a 12-to-1 staggered, periods at the beginning, at the end of the day for first grade and kindergarten. And that what I'm also hearing is that in order to do that and satisfy the instructional minute requirements, we would really literally have to extend the day by 45 minutes in terms of pure instructional minutes to achieve the equity there. Right? Is that correct?
No. Within the current first grade schedule and kindergarten schedule, there is room to be able to have staggered. It is not a 45-minute staggered, but there's room. There's also room to play with how long lunch is, how long recess is, to then increase that staggered time. In addition, I already mentioned the tiered staggered approach where first to second, and then you could have those longer first, second trimester to third trimester. So staggered can be a part of the day. In sample schedules for kindergarten as well, based on the instructional minutes are shown, a school and a principal could still have 60 minutes of staggered at the kindergarten level. In addition, one of the other things that was brainstormed by teachers, because at the end of each feedback session, it was actually open dialogue for them to share concerns and thoughts and ideas. And the last question was, what are your insights? What are your thoughts? What are your creative ideas? And one of the creative ideas that was shared was on minimum days doing a grab and go lunch. I spoke with CNS and they said that is doable. So that is actually instructional minutes we can gain on minimum days that then wouldn't affect our other days. And so in using Julio's word, the Sudoku, it is a Sudoku in the minutes, and that's up to the principals and the staff then to figure out how those minutes will best fit the site's needs.
Okay, so then really the issue is that's been raised is they wouldn't necessarily have the full 45 minutes on each side. There would be some, but it's not as much as that has been in the past. But
Right.
I also understand that it is a site-by-site thing, and that it's within the context that we just talked about. But the sites have the ability to set their schedules. So staggering can happen. It's just not as long as what used to be, or it could be as long for the first couple of trimesters, and then the last one be no
Right.
staggered, that type
And
of
if-
thing, right?
And if they played with the minutes at lunch or recess or an extended day, as was already mentioned, it could be longer
Yeah.
as well.
So I appreciate the idea of getting teachers together and certainly want to get their input on everything. But to me, there's certain parameters in there that are not solvable in terms of, I don't think anybody's going to increase the number of minutes that they're teaching in the day. That doesn't seem to be an option. So that's a fixed number. So within that context, I don't know that you have too many options. That's where I'm struggling.
Can I?
Yeah.
Trustee Miller, I'd like to just interject. I do think we need to kind of clear the way. We're talking about two different issues and they're getting mingled. So the one issue is instructional minutes, and we have to align instructional minutes and have it consistent. I mean, it's ed code. It's straightforward. But the other issue that's getting mingled in there is the challenges of the scheduling and how it is impacting the reading program and how it's currently scheduled. So I think we have to really redirect and really think about what we're being asked to do, which is align instructional minutes so that there's consistency across the board. The scheduling of the how and what that looks like, I do agree with Trustee Carrion that we need to have more teacher involvement, and they have to be actively engaged with that process. But what I am struggling with is the notion that if the staggered schedule goes away, that small group instruction engagement with our students cannot go to the wayside. As already mentioned, small group instruction can happen anytime and in many, many different ways. And I had some correspondence with one of my child's former teachers and having some dialogue about just teachers collaborating and talking about how can we make that happen. And this is personal for me. I have a daughter that is a struggling reader, and so she does benefit with that smaller group instruction. But what I don't want to have a message be had is that even if we align these minutes and get some consistency across the board, that small group instruction engagement is going to go to the wayside. And I want to make sure that that is clear, that that's not what we're saying. And I think it's really important that what I hear Trustee Carrion really talking at the heart and the concern I'm hearing from the teachers, and I had some opportunity to talk with teachers as well, is that they need help with this transition. And so we as the district will have to help support to do that and help how to make this transition so that our students don't lose out. And so speaking from the heart, for me, there are so many creative ways that this type of engagement for reading instruction can work, can look like, and we do have to leverage the expertise of our teachers in collaboration with the district to help flesh this out. But I think it's really important that we don't get the issues commingled.
I think that's really, really a good point. I mean, what we're voting on tonight is whether or not we align the minutes, basically. To me, and I'm open to suggestions, but to me, this is ultimate flexibility within the guardrails of the number of minutes that teachers are in the classroom, basically.
But I'm not sure that's true, because let's say first grade at Moore wants to do staggered reading. The only way they could really do it is if they extend their workday, like maybe 10 or 15, or I don't know. Is there a sample schedule? What would it look like if they had 45 minutes? When would they end their day? Do you know? Let's say they had a staggered schedule.
The full 45 minutes on
Full
each
45
side.
minutes. Let's say Moore decides they want to do 45 minutes of staggered reading. How would they be able to make their minutes work?
Each student still has to have, like Trustee Meyer said, each student still has to have that whatever number of minutes it is per day. But then it's plus, basically on the teacher side, it's plus 45 minutes for the teacher every single day.
No.
Not necessarily.
Thank you,
So every minute counts in terms of recess and lunch, and you total that over the course of the days, and then you multiply also the number of minimum days, the Wednesdays in which we have collaboration. And so, for example, if you went from a 45-minute lunch to a 40-minute lunch, that 5 minutes can be moved to the end or the beginning for staggered. If you went from a 15-minute recess to a 10-minute recess, that 5 minutes can be moved to the staggered or not. The same would be true for the end of the day. Like if you extended your day just for 5 minutes, that could be added. The 5 minutes, if you think about it, that's 20 minutes a week, which then goes to the weekly minutes that get multiplied to the yearly minutes. When we looked at these minutes, we did look at a lot of sample schedules, and staggered was possible to do it within the minutes that was given. It was shorter than 45, but that was one sample schedule we looked at. Different schedules, and that's where we follow the CBA. That's where it comes to the principals, and that work happens at the school site. can be worked on to create a longer staggered.
So I'd just like to add on what's being stated. Staggered is just one example, but I don't want that to be the only option that we're talking about here. I mean, small group instruction and the reading program, I mean, as mentioned, there's literacy blocks, there's the workshop model that supports small group instruction, and having our teachers who have the expertise to work with navigating, having students work in stations. It's not just in kindergarten, it can happen in high school. Our teachers have a skill set to manage working with students. Yes, it takes time putting those protocols in place, but I've seen it happen, in countless kindergarten classrooms in first grade and second grade. It happens. So once again, I'm looking at the numbers for TK kindergarten. We're talking about an increase of 5,000 minutes. That's huge. And for me, coming from another state where we're still battling with half-day kindergarten in this state, these minutes count, and we cannot lose sight. The hows of the programming of instruction with the reading program, yes, we need to flush that out, and the teachers need to have their voice to figure that out. But when we look at the proposed number of minutes, what I'm applauding the district for putting together is that we're going way and above beyond what the state's asking us to do. And in our next agenda item, we're talking about how to expand extended learning and how we're going to consider Saturday day instruction. So we have to keep sight of what's the focus here.
Well, I just want to reiterate what I said earlier, which is we're not being asked tonight to approve staggered reading or not staggered reading. What we're being asked to approve tonight is that we're aligning the minutes to be the same at each grade level at each of our elementary schools. So I agree that continued work, I appreciate Director Galletti and Dr. Woodward. They took a pulse of where they believe the board was and where the teachers were, and have come up with a lot of different ideas and worked with the staff on these issues. But at the end of the day, it's the individual school site in consultation with their teachers that will determine what programmatic structure that they do at that school site. We didn't mandate it when everybody was doing staggered, and we had school sites come to us, not a principal, not one set of teachers, but schools that came forward and said, we want to change, we want to do something differently. The board didn't say, no, you can't do that. We said, you're the principal, and with the teachers at your site, you can figure out what it is you want to do. And so that's why we have some that do staggered and some that don't.
And
So can I finish? So to me, this is it's a simpler concept. It's that we want to come into compliance with Ed Code for the main reason that we are currently disadvantaging some of our students who aren't getting the same number of instructional minutes, whether or not they're getting staggered, as other students in our district. So we're trying to make this be in compliance with the law and also fair to all of our students. And then how it looks at each site is going to be determined by the principal and the teachers at that site. So to me, that's the difference. I am someone who likes staggered reading. I spent an enormous amount of time in elementary school classrooms with my children and my children's teachers, and was someone who, fought for class size reduction in a number of different ways over the years in advocacy. So, I'm well aware, thank you for reminding us all of the studies about at what level a lower class size really does make a difference in student achievement. But for me, this is a baseline. This is where we have to start to come into compliance, and then the work will to happen at the school sites for what that's going to look like for each school. And the sooner that happens, it's better for parents so that they know what's going to happen next year. We haven't even talked about the collaboration at the beginning of the day versus the collaboration at the end of the day, which is also not up for a vote tonight. I want to just remind people when they're looking at the slide deck and it's talking about those two things, that is not what we're talking about here. This tonight, we're just voting on whether or not to align the minutes. So, yes, Trustee McCaughey.
Yeah, so I just wanted to also to say that, you know, and I'll probably bring it up when we talk about agenda items, but I think that another symptom or concern is, you know, the reading instruction, how that looks, and, you know, how to support that. And so maybe that needs to be an agenda item to put at another time in terms of, you know, really looking at the support, because right now, the way the reading instruction at the elementary level is put in place has been built on that staggered schedule. So I hear what Trustee Carrion is addressing in terms of, you know, engaging our teachers and support for how that can really be implemented, and that's being affected in this conversation about instructional minutes.
Okay, so we've had a lot of discussion. Is there a motion?
Can I make my motion to extend it?
Absolutely.
I'd like to see if we can have more. I think we're close. I just don't think we're there yet. I'm afraid that if we don't have this conversation, some schools will just not have staggered because they don't feel like it's an option. I think they need to see some sample schedules. So I'm making the motion to extend it by a month.
Is there a second? Okay, there was no second for the motion to table move the vote to a month away, so the motion fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I'll move approval of the recommended, I guess we don't really have a specific thing here, recommended number of instructional minutes as, what's that?
It's on page.
Oh, absolutely. Of the recommended student instruction, 2021-22 recommended student instructional minutes.
And there's been a motion and a second to approve the alignment of student instructional minutes by grade at the elementary level. Is there further discussion? Trustee Maher?
The recommended motion. Excuse me, the recommended motion is the administration recommends that the Board of Trustees review and approve the alignment of student instructional minutes by grades at the elementary level. Plain and simple. And Trustee Karen, we're not telling teachers they have to do away with anything. Here's the minutes they must utilize, because that's what the board states stand. You have the job or task of meeting with your principal and solving it. But then, okay, then let me ask the next question. If we don't approve the minutes, how would it happen?
I just think there needs to be more discussion with teachers.
Yeah, but what type of discussion? What could change?
So again, what we used to have meetings where first grade teachers would get together and they would discuss, they would have sample schedules, they would all be able to agree and come to consensus. I don't feel like we've engaged our teachers enough. I think we're almost there.
But nothing's saying they can't do that.
But if you're extending their days, I'm afraid that teachers are going to be pitted against each other. So let's say Kelly and I are at the same school and I want staggered and she doesn't want staggered. So what happens then? If there's not a sample schedule, we're going to fight it out and the principal may just decide.
I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing they must meet with the teachers.
I'm just saying.
What do you mean pitted against each? Can you clarify?
Because, so let's say, if he's saying it's up to the school, that if I don't have a sample schedule, like what it could look like, what if I want to have staggered scheduled at my school and you don't? I don't want to give up 5 minutes of my lunch, but you do. I mean, I'm afraid that teachers are going to come together and it's going to pit teachers against each other.
But
I mean, like staggered reading in first grade, they are loud. They need that class. They are loud when they're learning to
Staggered
read.
is just one way.
No, but I'm just saying.
All right, okay.
Anyway.
Yep. I appreciate the passion, honestly. We're all here for, and we care about student reading for sure. So, hold on a sec, let me restate the motion. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the alignment of student instructional minutes by grade at the elementary level. I'd like to call for the vote unless there's a pressing reason not to.
I just want to say one last thing, that staggered is just one way to support our students with the program. It's just not the only way. I know it's the way it's been done. But, you know, I think this is the time to have the teachers work together to talk about different options of what else could be done besides staggered that could provide the same means.
Okay,
anyway.
I'm actually going to call that. 'Cause-
Okay.
So the reason I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to quell this discussion, except to say that I think that the staff has clearly heard, I hazard a guess, that this is something that we want teachers to work on together and work with their principals, which is what our collective bargaining and our direction is, but that we, I believe, are, as soon as I call for the vote, we're going to say that the minutes have to be equal. So the work will now begin at the school site. So I'm going to call for the vote. Trustee Carrion?
No.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Okay, so the motion passes to align the student instructional minutes by grade at the elementary level, and I trust and ask that the work will continue in the discussion about the appropriate strategies to use at the different school sites, one of which may include staggered. I assume it will, because we've had passionate teachers from multiple school sites who have reached out to us. So thank you for that. Does anyone need a bio break? It's not 8 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock. Otherwise, we can keep going, and you can point of personal privilege to leave the dais, or would you rather take a little break?
Can we take a 5-minute break?
We certainly can. All right, so please return promptly at 9:01. Welcome back. We had a quick break here, and we've finished with item 12.5, which we had moved up in the agenda, and now we'll return to the normal order, and we will hear 12.3. This is report discussion on the Learning Opportunities Grant, which is an exciting opportunity for school districts in California this time. So, Ahmad, is this your item?
Yes, it is. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, great. Well, good evening. We'll give a report, and we'll have Assistant Superintendent Dr. Woodward and Assistant Dialazzo will also support me in this presentation. We'll give kind of a background to the pandemic funding to date. The district has received a variety of funding sources since March of 2020 on this pandemic. We'll kind of discuss some of the new state grants the district will be receiving, and we'll particularly dive deep into the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, talking first about the input that we received and some of the high-level options and programs that we're thinking about in utilizing those funds for. I do want to reiterate that all of these funds are one-time in nature, and one of the challenges with receiving such a large amount of one-time funds with pretty tight deadlines is that our school districts, we're equipped and staffed to manage the current operations, which itself has been a challenge in these pandemic days. So when you receive a large sum of one-time monies, that requires additional personnel, additional management, additional staffing, additional hiring, and that really puts a lot of pressure on the existing systems that are currently under a lot of stress. So that's one of the items that we brought today with some of the personnel, was to alleviate those issues and to allow us to be able to move some of these programs forward. And then finally, again, the most important part of today's discussion is your input into these plans, because if we were to take all of the great plans that we've received, and I think we've shared some of the raw data with you, we would exceed the amount of funding available. So again, we have to prioritize and see what's most important to the community and to the board. So through the current funding we received early on, I think it was around last year in March or April, that the state approved Senate Bill 117, $100 per student to help schools with some of the immediate impacts. And so that was a drop in the bucket with the additional funding that later on was approved through what was called the Learning Loss Mitigation, or the CARES Act dollars. And our district put those dollars to good use in supporting our students in remote learning with providing technology to our students, technology for our staff, and then using those dollars to ensure that our facilities were safe for our teachers and our students to return to, and helping with small cohort groups and other learning loss issues that were occurring. So those funds have been essentially used for those purposes, and pretty much the remaining dollars on those original fronts have now been expended. Later on, the federal government passed several other stimulus packages, and that included dollars for schools. And so you'll see ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Those are the two federal dollars that remain. And then this state took early action in February and March to provide schools with additional grant opportunities under the in-person instruction grant and the expanded learning opportunities grants. And so the federal dollars are seen to be some of the most flexible dollars. They also have some of the, their dates are a little bit further out, with ESSER 2 going into 23 and ESSER 3, I believe, going into 24. So we have a little bit more opportunity in terms of the timeline on those funds. They're meant to help schools deal with the whole host of pandemic issues, including learning loss, but also facility-related issues and any type of impacts necessary to maintain the operation of the district and its continuity. So total, that's about $3.28 million. The in-person instruction grant was meant to incentivize the reopening of schools, and we met those requirements by opening school before April 1st. I think I can't remember the date, March 12th, 13th, so somewhere around there was the exciting, what was the date, Joan?
Well, it was March 8th, March 11th. We had 3 dates, actually.
Okay. Those were exciting days as we brought our kindergartners and younger ones back, and then we expanded to 3, 5, and then secondary. So these funds were meant to support those activities and to help assist schools to remain open, providing dollars that could go to PPE, again, COVID testing, clean disinfection, and also facility improvements to maintain necessary health and safety, as well as supporting instructional in-person activities around those as well. That is about 4.4. We just completed the paperwork the other day. Tom submitted those, and so we will see those funds coming in shortly, and they've divided them into basically a disbursement in the current quarter, and then one, I believe, in August. The expanded learning opportunity grant, that's the largest of these grants, and has specific parameters by which the district has to meet in terms of both where the dollars can be spent and also some of the breakdown of those dollars. And so 85% of the funds need to be for in-person services, and within that, within the total dollars, 10% has to go towards the hiring of paraprofessionals, and that's instructional aides and educator professionals who would help support with a variety of student support services. And so the other, we have to have a plan, so this one does require a plan, and that will be submitted to the state 5 days after it's been approved by the board. So hopefully we'll bring this item back for approval at the next board meeting. Both of these funds the district has the opportunity to expend them in advance, and we are utilizing those funds to jumpstart some of these programs and making sure that both in-person and learning opportunities continue. And so for this one, the amount is about 9.35 million. The state has identified these 7 categories as the areas that these dollars should be spent on. And that's, again, we'll go into greater detail into each one of these and some of the programs and ideas that have been generated and that we'd like to seek further input. We took a lot of time, and there was a lot of meetings that we held, and we did them in a study session exercise format where we discussed what these funds were intended for, and then in a lot of instances we were able to, through the Zoom meetings, do small group breakouts. So we met with our standing councils, both the faculty, the parent, the classified employees, LCAC, DLAC, budget advisory. And then in addition to that, obviously the leadership, we had both direct opportunities for teachers to meet and see it, and also work with the principals at in their meetings, and created a form which people could directly provide input. And additionally, we had some town hall meetings with our families as well. And so we gathered that data and reviewed it, and we're still reviewing it in terms of there was quite a large amount of data that came in. And so in this next slide, you can see this, what do they call these? Word something?
Word cloud.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is that the larger, kind of words you see, school, time, counselor, support, again, a lot of, key words have come through it. But we started to see patterns in a lot of the data that was coming in, and that's reflected in the how we kind of came up with some of the ideas that we want to seek further input. So again, we received over 200 inputs from our staff, our teachers, and 300 from various stakeholders. We kind of had some polls that we had in the town hall meeting to see the interest amongst our parent community for various programs. And then we were sat down and reviewed these, and then kind of generated these high-level plans. And I just kind of want to reiterate that this stuff is moving so fast that in terms of the state saying that this money's coming, the district having to put plans together, that we're at a high level. We need to get the people and the time to keep going more granular. And so the discussions we have today is to set that foundation so that we can go and have the bandwidth to take some of these programs on. So with that, at this time, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Woodward, who will run us through some of the key concepts that were developed under category number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Sheikh-Oslami. Adding on to what was just shared, the ideas captured under item 1, increasing the instructional minutes and days during the school year, summer school or intersession programs, were crafted after we looked at all of the input. So tonight we're bringing these broad ideas to the trustees so that we can hear your perspective and feedback. One thing to point out is that there are more details on each slide than it is possible we can actually implement and potentially be able to pay for, but we're adding them all because we feel like they're all very important. Therefore, we need your insight in order to prioritize many of these things that we're presenting tonight. You will also notice that there are multiple concepts that overlap in each of the 7 broad focus areas for funding, as many of the budgetary considerations are interrelated. For Area 1, the plans to include holding more activities for students on Saturdays, providing additional support and flexibility for high school students in their daily schedules by offering A or 7-period classes so students can also engage in interventions or credit recovery during the school day without becoming farther behind in meeting college entrance requirements. And additional staff will be needed to coordinate these programs, such as the coordinator of summer programs, intercession, and extended learning that were approved earlier this evening, who will coordinate the additional learning opportunities that we are planning for our summer programs, for intercession, which would be during our holiday seasons. When there's a break in school, we could potentially have students back at those times, and other forms of extended learning. And, for example, summer school, which is offered to students who require additional assistance or remediation, has been increased from the required 20 days to now 30 days. And the concept of intermittent academic boot camps, this is something that can target specific learning skills, is also included, along as Mr. Sheikh Islami mentioned, increasing the hours of our paraprofessionals or classified staff.
Can I interrupt real quick? Are the items on here in a priority order, or are they just, no, just,
Okay, so next slide, I believe.
Yes,
Janelle?
next slide.
Oops, sorry about that. There you go.
Thank you. On this slide, you will see that professional development for staff, including the need for trauma-informed care and other initiatives that will positively impact the mental health at the high school level, the coordinator position of academic extended day and intervention programs, as approved earlier, this evening, along with staff to supervise, as we discussed, the additional learning options for students at the site level. Other key potential expenditures at the elementary level, and expanding the use of Wilson or Barton for training for staff, and offering up language acquisition supports for emerging bilingual students out.
Mr. Woodward, in this next section, section 3 of the grant, we focus on items to address those barriers to learning. That includes mental health services, physical health services, counseling supports, school meal programs, before and after school programs, and other social emotional learning supports for our students and our families. So a couple of the items in that list, as I mentioned, mental health support, so increasing counseling. We are looking for bilingual counselors to support the work that we're looking at. Also, the opportunity to expand contracts with our community therapists in the area, and then possibly some internship opportunities to bring on social workers and other mental health providers to our district. Peer counseling is another area that we have found to be very supported. And so expanding or creating a peer counseling program provided by or supported by a certificated or licensed staff member. Additional nurses has also been an area that we have found to be improved or expanded, I guess is the word I was looking for. And so that will help the physical health needs of our students. Dr. Woodward mentioned increased counselor support, but this one in particular is counselor support for before or after school programs. More improvements to our wellness centers, or growing those wellness centers that we've already established, and then some areas regarding more focused interventions during our access and flex periods, and then also a possibility for a summer bridge program for students who are transitioning to our new schools, or to their new schools, I'm sorry. Back to Dr. Sheikh Islami, Mr. Sheikh Islami.
We want to make sure that we continue supporting our teaching, learning, and tech coordinators. Again, we brought those staff early on, and the difference that they made both for remote learning, hybrid learning, and really it cannot be understated. I mean, that was an incredible support. So we want to make sure we continue that. We recognize the importance of the one-to-one program, and we want to ensure that we still have the devices as we come back to school, and other needs that we might have as we move to more one-to-one program at the elementary schools. One of the things that we learn is that our families are also in need of tech support to help their students, and so we want to think about opportunities around extending that kind of tech support to our families, as well as other wraparound services in mental health, and expanding some of our college career center work that happens at the high schools now that our students are going to be coming back. So those are some of the ideas under category number 4. I'm going to send it back to Ed.
Yes, so category number 5 focuses on supports for students who are credit deficient. And so we talk a lot about credit recovery. That's not a new concept for us, but what are the ways that we can improve credit recovery in our new system from Virtual Academy? What could summer school look like? Saturday school, we've already mentioned, after school programs in supporting of our students who are credit deficient. We're also looking at how we can improve our opportunities for our students through our local businesses, really thinking about career readiness, vocational readiness supports, and how we can tie in some local businesses to support those students who want to look at that pathway. And then professional development. So what does equitable grading practices look like? How do we improve differentiated instructions for our students who have been struggling? And then the last thing is there's really good feedback about mentoring programs, and specifically for our underserved students and families. What's that possibly look like if we have a mentoring program that really focuses on college and career mentoring? And then now, Dr. Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. DeLazzo. So this item is diagnostic progress monitoring and benchmark assessments of pupil learning, and we realize the need exists to provide additional support for students who have dyslexia. So as you can see, this is identified as a priority. As well, providing funding so sites can continue to more deeply engage in data talks, utilizing our MAP assessment, and be able to pay teachers for the additional time that they spend on activities that support student learning, such as the cycle of inquiry, professional development, or other activities. And finally, more robustly higher, we put SLP, speech language pathologists, and then SLPAs, those are speech language pathology assistants that can be extremely helpful to us, and psychologists in order to clear the backlog of assessments. And now, back to Mr. DeLazzo.
Yes, back to me. The last section, section 7 of the grant. So this section helps to address how the pandemic has had different levels of impact to our students' mental health. Specifically how some may have experienced some pretty significant trauma of the isolation and other circumstances that the pandemic has brought to us. So some of the things that we were thinking about or observed in the feedback, hiring, again, university interns to support the work, social workers, psychologists, marriage family therapists, really focusing on that trauma-informed practices, PD. What are some mental health support integrated programs for our schools? You know, we talk a lot about our social emotional learning curriculum, wraparound services, and then what are some, again, ideas for growing our wellness centers. Tutors, a lot of discussion about tutors, but really looking at multilingual tutors, so tutors that can help our students who are learning English. And then utilizing a needs assessment of some sort. This one called the 40 developmental assets. It's linked here in this slide, but looking at ways that we can measure what are those positive supports students need in order to be successful, and then developing a specific support plan for those students as we identify those needs. Okay, I will stop there, and I think I throw it back to Mr. Sheikh Al-Islami.
Other considerations and needs that we need to discuss. So again, we talked about, a lot of these programs depend not only in our ability to find the staff, but ability to attract the right staff and then to be able to manage and run these programs. And remember, every school district in California has this funding, and there's not a day I go by that on NPR or somebody else, everyone's having a hard time hiring. And skilled and unskilled. So this is going to be definitely a challenge for all school districts in California. So that's a major consideration. There are other pandemic-related financial impacts that we have to consider, such as the state unemployment insurance rates increasing from that 0.05% to a whopping 1.3%. So that's like an additional almost $1.4 million on next year's budget. We have to, again, think about some of our, ongoing pandemic costs, such as our supplies and materials, And then any type of other facility improvements that we want to make that are strategic and will help making sure our classrooms are healthy. Again, we talked about the one-to-one technology program and continuing to support the software and applications that have been utilized this year and have been well received. And just to give you a flavor of it, we analyzed those and looking at usage. And I think this year we spent over $600,000 on those software and applications, and many of them are highly appreciative, and we'd like to continue those. And then we have our other coordinators that we want to look at and see if we can continue their services as well. So in terms of the process, again, we try to keep this as brief as possible, but the most important thing is to receive your input today, and that will help us with refining the program. We continue to review the teacher and staff input, and the next steps for us, and we've already kind of begun it because time is so tight, is to kind of refine the plan, again, at the high level, bring, estimate some cost to these, do some prioritization, and then we'll bring the plan to you. The state's plan is very high level. It's really looking at making sure that there was community engagement and input, and then assigning some dollar amounts to those broad categories. And then we'll update, the state, we'll get regular updates as we spend it, and then there'll be a final report. And then our books get audited to make sure that we spent the monies based on the grant at the end of the fiscal year. So that's the process before us. And then all of the work that we do here and all of the allocations and the other one-time funds will be built into the 21-22 budget, which we're also working on, and then we'll move forward from there. We want to hire the staff and begin the implementation of a lot of these programs. So with that, I'll turn it over back to you, John.
All right. So, shall we do some questions first? Steve?
I meant a couple of questions, and if you'll bear with me a little bit. So we have about $14 million to spend by 9/2022?
Correct. We have about $14 million per the state's two grants by August of 2022.
Okay. Personally, I would like to see a majority of that money go directly to students. By that I mean, I saw in one of the proposals, or one of the, not recommendations, one of the possibilities, I guess you would say, to extend the school day. That way all students would benefit from that. Now I know you'd have to negotiate that and everything else, but even if we extended it 20 minutes a day for 4 days a week, I did some quick figuring on hourly and so forth, maybe that would only cost over $1 million. I'm not sure, but that, maybe you could get the staggered rate, whatever, but I would think that all the students would benefit. I would like to see an aid period for all students, because we had a lot of lost learning this last year and a half. And I think as many students as we can reach, it would benefit. And I know we have to spend some of the money on PPEs and air purifiers and all that. I understand that. But I would like to see the majority of the money go directly to students, whether it's through Barton or some form of tutoring, because we have to make up that lost learning. And I trust that Dr. Woodard and the rest of the cabinet will look at that.
Anyone else have comments or questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Oh. So I'm not sure that I agree sort of mandating an extra length of time for all students is necessarily the best way. I do think that spending money on the students is definitely the right thing. But I kind of have a dream, as you were talking about this, that, the metaphor is kind of like a slingshot. So past year, we've been pulled backwards by all the, challenges we've had. And here we've got this chunk of money and a lot of passion and interest. Can we shoot ahead of where we were before the pandemic started? I mean, that would be like the dream thing. But then my metaphor stops because there's kind of like a wall in front of it, and the wall is you can't hire enough people to do all the work you got to do. So I'm like, oh, how do we get through that? So I guess one suggestion I'd have there is let's be creative in terms of our willingness to pay for that support. I'd rather pay extra money to get quality support than necessarily blanket it with quantity support, if that makes sense. That's one thing. The other thing is I'd say is you guys have, I mean, you're looking for input from us, and I'd say the input you've gotten from the people you had on page whatever is way better than I can ever provide. I mean, they're the experts, so you've engaged them. But the one thing that comes to my mind is, you know, students have all had a different experience during this time, and a bunch of them have been out of school, and some of them have actually kind of liked it or whatever, or gotten, let's say, gotten used to it. And I just am not, I think we need a way to get kids reconnected to school. And so, you know, what could we do? I mean, even things like early on, more activities to bring kids in to get together, to kind of, you know, remember what it felt like maybe, and maybe even make it better. You know, so I don't know how we engage them a little bit more on developing connection to their schools, especially the kids, you know, that haven't even been to their school, right? I mentioned in my questions in the week, you know, I do think at the high school level, maybe even the middle school level too, that SIAC and the peer advocacy concept might be something we could leverage. We've got a pocket of peer advocacy, for example, at Foothill. I went and watched it. I mean, it's really effective, I think, and you know, expanding that to a certain extent, or maybe making that institutionalized somehow. I mean, this is a time to. I mean, I know we have ongoing expense issues, but I don't know that would cost all that much. I do like what you talked about, Ahmad, is leveraging the good things that we've learned. So the softwares that we've acquired, you know, the new technologies we acquired, you know, continuing to build on that. You know, I think we have an opportunity there. I love the intern ideas. I mean, getting university students, getting interns. I mean, yeah, we have a shortage of employees, but you know, they're going to want real life experiences, and I think this is an opportunity that we can give them real life experiences, and I think that there were a bunch of items, a bunch of the areas here you had that listed, so that's an awesome idea. And then also, I just have a selfish interest in trying to clear the backlog of the, you know, IEP issues and whatnot that we might have. It's worth spending money now to really kind of address some of those things, because those cost us longer in the long term. So those are my, you know, expert guides.
Other comments, Mary Jo?
Sure. If I had my wish list, I would love more counselors. I think especially with mental health, we really need that. I would love dyslexia. Not dyslexia. I would let me rephrase that. A universal screener for dyslexia and more training. And I would love, you know, the opportunity, let's say, theoretically, a second grade class wants to stagger reading and their day goes to 3:30, pay them extra for that. You know, that would just be on my wish list. So.
Kelly?
Yes, President Larson, you're looking over at me. I know this is, I don't know where to start because I don't know where I'll stop. It's just, there's so much that I'm passionate about. You know, I do feel very, very strongly that we need to support our students who have been affected because of the extended loss of face-to-face instruction. So what stood out to me was, you know, definitely expansion on, you know, the example that was already mentioned, Wilson or Barton training, consistency for the support with reading instruction. I didn't see it necessarily mapped out or targeted, but I have been reading some research in my professional work that there will be gaps in mathematics as well, and so support for helping to bridge the gap with students who may have been affected academically in mathematics. I'm a huge advocate for professional development with teachers that's meaningful. So I loved the bullets about differentiation, because our students are going to be all over the place. And so, strategies that can be ready to use in the classroom immediately, that definitely stands out to me. Another trustee already mentioned the universal screening for dyslexia. I actually came across that the other week, and something that my daughter would have benefited from. And so I think that that's something that is becoming more prevalent and could help with our students. I do have a question. Can you explain what the parent wraparound services to access? I didn't really understand that one. Ahmad, could you clarify a little bit more about that one? That was on bullet number 4, community learning hubs. Because I do think that, support for our parents in the mental health avenue is going to be huge. So, I don't know which bullet, but talking about the trauma and the traumatic issues, for our teachers who are not experts, and also our students who have been affected. But that was one that stood out to me, and I didn't quite understand what parent wraparound really meant.
Sure, go ahead, Ed.
I apologize for asking it on the fly, and I missed it ahead of time.
Trustee McCaughey, maybe I could start and then my colleagues can assist. Maybe I can start answering your question and maybe others.
Okay, all right. Well, down the road, yeah.
No, I can answer now. I know you asked Ahmed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's 4D. I apologize. It's under the community learning hubs.
Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I'll start, Trustee McCaughey, and maybe others can help me. But the concept of wraparound services, so it's really about extending our ability to realize what are the needs of our students and then seek outside support and other experts to support those needs. So we have counselors, we have school psychologists, but if we may need more social workers or marriage family therapists to support family networks in their mental health needs. So wraparound is really about finding all those different support services for that student who needs that support. So that was our idea, that we would have those services available.
Okay, thank you.
In that particular item, the thinking was that it's not always just the students that have the need. So sometimes the student's learning is being impacted by issues that are going on in the home, and by providing services to the home or connecting them to services, we might be able to get that student to move along.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one would be on, funding. This has been an ongoing conversation about the 5C, funding equitable grading practices. I just highlight it because, with COVID and the instruction that our students have been faced with, we have to also really look at, how our instruction's changed and, the grading practices. And I know that that's being, discussed, but I think that this would be a great time to support that. So those are just a few highlights.
So I have a couple comments as well. And Mark, I really appreciate your comment about how you were referencing what we were doing pre-pandemic and, sort of slingshotting ahead of that. And I kept thinking about all of the things that we have been fighting to get back ever since the cuts of the Great Recession. And and some of the things that went away, some of those categoricals maybe should have gone away or, weren't the best use of those dollars, and I can appreciate that. But there were some other things that we dearly, dearly miss. And unfortunately, these are one-time dollars that won't solve those problems long-term either. And not to editorialize too much, although I know it's a risk, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, what the state has done is given us an enormous amount of money to address these problems, but unfortunately, it's one time. And so we're going to do some intensive work with our students and some of that we're going to love. We're going to be like, this is the best thing we've come across, and we want to keep doing it, but now we don't have any more money to do it anymore. And so then we're going to be faced with, okay, so now we have to look, I mean, I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but this grant represents something like 5% of our annual budget. So there's those setting of expectations, right? So these things that we're doing right now, that the state has given us this windfall, it's almost like a petri dish, right? Like we're going to see what really comes out of this and what's really successful. And I think those are the kinds of things that we're going to try to, I hope, put into our LCAP that are going to work on a longer term basis and figure out how we're going to pay for them. So that being said, for me, especially since we need to spend, one of the requirements is 10% of these dollars need to be spent on paras. So is that, just special education paras, or is that folks that we train and hire to do Barton or Wilson, as that opportunity? This is a need in our district, and we have tried to have existing staff get trained, and it hasn't, it's been slower than we would like, and so here's an opportunity to perhaps to do some of that work. As far as an extended school day, I like that idea, but I'm not really, and maybe I'm off base here, but I don't really feel like we need more core instruction right now. What I feel like we need is more connection. The students, like you said, need to be more connected to their school. They need to be more, involved in some of this. If it's an extended school day, some of those sections could be something different, not necessarily another math remediation class, but or you do it in a different way. You do an hour of code class. You do something that's just really engaging, that's they're working on, and that it takes a lot of skills that they're going to learn from it, but it's different and engaging and fun. In fact, I had a conversation with my son about, saying, we're going to have to look at this, and how are we going to do it, and what are we going to spend it on? And he was like, as a high school math teacher, he was like, you need to have some summer classes that are just fun. Cooking, baking is math. They need to be baking. They need to be doing all of these really engaging things that are going to get them connected, that they need to use certain skills. What were we talking about earlier? Brian was talking about this at Village, where they were doing a financial literacy class. I mean, anything that's going to get them connected, and they're going to learn some skills along the way, but it's going to be things that are really engaging to get them back into the idea of coming to school and being at school. It is the counselors I really appreciate. I wasn't quite so clear about at the elementary level versus adding additional counselors at the middle school and high school level. For me, again, Barton, dealing with our challenges around services for dyslexia, I would like to see that. We used to have, again, pre-cuts. We had peer tutors. We paid high school students. I know we've talked about that in LCAP before as well. That serves a couple of purposes. You get students the tutoring that they need, and the students they get a job, and it might be multilingual. The Family Health and Wellness Center, I think, is a fabulous idea. Even our libraries, just having them open and accessible. Our campuses are, high schools are like a big plant anyway, but we don't tend to keep that stuff open. We keep our fields open, and we've got a lot of things open, but having services at our libraries, I think, would be really awesome. The trauma-informed work, restorative justice, the peer advocacy, there's some really awesome things going on over at Foothill, and love to see that. What was the other one? The PD. We used to have 5 days of professional development, and that went bye-bye in the cuts as well. We went down to 3, and we were lucky to keep that. I'd love to see that go back up. Again, we'd have it for a little while, and then we'd have to talk about it again, but I just think that it could be really good use of time. The mentoring is awesome. Yeah, I mean, I just think a lot of this is going to end up being, we're going to have to do services because we're just not going to be able to find the bodies, the staff to hire permanently to do these things. And yes, we have to have the services for students that go to the students, but all of the people that we currently have working here already have full-time jobs. And so some of these positions that are in here to coordinate some of this work are absolutely crucial because otherwise it's just not going to happen. We saw that with our LCAP the first couple of years for sure. We had great ideas, the committees came up with great ideas, but there just wasn't, the work didn't happen the way it was planned. So, you know, we're going to definitely need people to drive these processes. And it's so funny that you mentioned the 40 developmental assets because this was something in our district that was, we had a counselor at Foothill who was the person who led that work, and she's no longer working here, and that work is not being done to the extent that it was before. So it takes people who are engaged and passionate about these projects. So, yeah, I don't know if that was helpful. Just also a comment to the public. This is high level, it's super fast. The state is not going to hold us to, oh, you said you were going to, the 10% for paras is one thing, that's for sure. But they're not going to say, oh, you said you were going to build, you were going to do a, you know, increase in counselor to 1 FTE, and now you didn't do that. That's not going to be looked at that way because they know that they've not given us very much time to plan. So this is a collaborative process in this very short amount of time that will continue as we move forward. I think that's fair to say. So do you feel like you heard enough from the board?
Yeah, very much so. It's been helpful.
Yeah, so we will have to, it has to be submitted by June, so we'll have to vote on it at our next meeting. So, no pressure, you guys. Thank you guys so much. I mean, honestly, it's just unprecedented. Like all that word has been used this year, this part is also true. To be given this wonderful amount of money to work with, to help our students who've been affected this year. So, but hard work. So that was 12.3.
Do you want to do a motion?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's see.
25, 35, so probably
11?
Yeah.
You can get done by 11?
Just to be safe.
11:30.
I'll move approval of extending our meeting time until no later than 11 p.m.
Is that doable? All right, is there a second?
Second.
Trustee Carrion? Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Miller?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting's been extended till 11. 12.4. Go ahead.
Dr. Woodward.
Thank you. Okay, I was going to say good evening again to everyone, but we're well into the evening. So this is a first reading on the report and discussion of elementary social studies adoption. It does not include any recommendations tonight pertaining to the elementary social studies program. And there will be a final meeting at the May 20th meeting for report discussion and possible action. And Elementary Director Galetti will present this tonight. Director Galetti?
Thank you, Dr. Wordworth. In the interest of time, I'll jump right into the presentation. Tonight is the first reading of 2 on the social studies adoption for the 21-22 school year. Tonight's presentation will be an overview of the pilot process. The second reading at our next meeting will be an overview of the pilot committee's recommendation of curriculum for adoption. To start, elementary staff piloted 3 publishers for the new social studies curriculum that will be implemented starting next school year. The pilot started in November and went through the end of March. 20 teachers and 2 administrators started on the committee and represented all grade levels, schools, and the DI program at Valley View. The pilot team met throughout the process, and currently a public preview of the materials is being conducted. Studies Weekly, TCI, Social Studies Alive, and McGraw-Hill Impact were the publishers used. Each of these programs is adopted by the California State Board of Education, have materials in both Spanish and English, and provide digital and print components. Initial quotes did vary by publisher. A critical component of the pilot process is the tool used to evaluate the curriculum. This tool was developed using the state guidelines for curriculum adoption and focused on alignment with standards, program organization, assessment, universal access, and instructional planning and support. Special attention was given to the curriculum, including multiple first-person narratives, accurate historical representations of history, and culturally sensitive material. Teachers were provided an overview and training of each curriculum by the specific publisher. Each program was utilized for social studies instruction for 4 weeks. After the completion of each curriculum, teachers completed an extensive rubric based on these 5 categories listed. After piloting each curriculum, members met to review a summary of results to distinguish the pros and cons of each program. Based on evaluation results and a discussion, a consensus building process was used to determine the final recommendation given by committee members. Public feedback sought during the preview will also be factored into the final recommendation. At the next meeting, a recommendation for adoption will be provided, and this recommendation will be based on the pilot teacher's evaluation results and the committee's recommendation. Do we have any? That's the end of my presentation. I will stop sharing and open it up for questions.
I have a question. So typically on a first read, we have a recommendation already. This one's a little different, this process. Do you, are we doing a change in process?
I would apologize. This is my first time doing a pilot, and I was trying to follow past practice from what I had learned and what I had read. I did a lot of research on just piloting curriculum through the California Department of Ed, so I apologize about that.
Well, that's all right. I mean, we typically have heard what the process is going to be, but then the first read is typically with the recommendation. So that's fine.
Isn't it, Larson, it's still open for public review? I don't know if they'd be really prepared for the recommendation right now.
Which is fine. It surprised me, that's all. I don't have any questions. Does anyone else have questions? Trustee Carry-On?
I was really kind of concerned that there was only 20 teachers out of 330. That's like less than 1%. And I'm wondering if it's because it was a pandemic and if we have to adopt this year. I mean, if we didn't have enough input, are we making a good decision for 7 years?
Great question. First, we do need to adopt, as our social studies curriculum that we are currently using is out of print. My predecessor before me secured about 3 years ago the Scott Forsman, which is the currently adopted book, a supply for 3 years. And what they actually secured was surplus curriculum from other districts. This is no longer available. So if we did move into next year without an adoption, we would have to find bridge material until an adoption was finalized. I do think because of the pandemic, it was difficult to have a large pilot committee. All teachers were asked and would have been accepted on the pilot committee, so that wasn't an issue in that we were trying to limit the numbers.
I loved the Social Studies Weekly because seemed very diverse and they had leveled readers, and I'd like to know more information from teachers. And if there's a way, if they're going to do a presentation, and if they're not doing a presentation, is there some way that they can email and tell us why they picked what they picked?
Great, I will make sure I include that in my next presentation.
So I have a couple questions and comments. First off, I did appreciate the survey data that we received over the weekend, communication of current input from the curriculum committee. I do agree with Trustee Carry-On that I do feel like the sampling was a little small, but I don't have a comparison of how many teachers normally participate on the committee. Depending on how you look at the data and how you analyze it, it can be interpreted a lot of different ways. And quick glance at some of the data, it was really close between all three of the publishing companies. One question that stood out, and I would like to applaud the survey because I felt like it was very lengthy in the questions that were asked. One question that kind of stood out to me was talking about, how did the teachers and the students enjoy the curriculum? And I would like to see that type of question broken out because the teacher perception will be very, very different than how the students might view that. So to extend what I'm saying there, I would love to get some information on, how did the students feel about the engagement into the curriculum? Because we're talking about all these different ways on how to re-engage and connect with our students. And so any core curriculum that we adopt, at the heart of it is it's being presented and taught to our students. And so, how is the text, how are the visuals, the types of questions that are being asked, really critical thinking for the students. And so I would love to get some of the student feedback on their interest, and whether it be feedback on the videos or activities. And that said, also would love to hear, I did appreciate the time that I had to meet with the district earlier this week because I had some questions as well. I would love to hear the teacher's narrative as well on, when they're at the next reading, their recommendation, really compelling reasons and why they're choosing that particular curriculum. Each curriculum had different strengths, but in terms of the process of how we gather that feedback, I think it's really important that we look at not only teacher perception, but also the students. And then one other thing in terms of, I do know that there's currently, this is being posted to the public. And I would also add that when that window closes, if you have not received a good response, sometimes an email post can get lost. And when I was navigating these materials, it's pretty in depth. I am professionally in the curriculum field, so I know how to navigate those materials. But parents may not necessarily have that know-how, so I would definitely consider, phone calls or, getting some, potential interviews, feedback from parents on their thought of the curriculum review. So those are my recommendations in terms of the process that you've shared tonight. I definitely will look forward to the next reading on the recommendation, but really drilling down on, compelling reasons and hearing from the teachers as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I will just say one thing, not that it can't be improved, but in my experience in this district, we don't have a lot of parental input into the curriculum adoption. And there's not generally, even though the materials, not just during a pandemic, but, you know, when materials are available for parents to come review, and it's just not as big a concern typically. But, you know, I think that some of those suggestions that you made are helpful try to get people more engaged in that process. So I just didn't want to set your expectations too high.
Well, I appreciate your point. I think sometimes it's how we deliver the information,
Right.
and, you know, and I passed on the review to some parents, and, you know, I can give some suggested recommendations, but I do know there are parents that are passionate about this, and maybe it's just the delivery of how we're gathering that information, but
Right.
duly noted.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that report. We'll look forward to that on the May 20th meeting. Now we'll go on to item 12.6, report discussion of possible action to extend the semester 1 temporary grading, credit, no credit grading policy. Dr. Woodward?
Yes, thank you. So, as stated, this is to extend the temporary grading policy that was adopted for semester 1. Secondary Director Graywell will request that semester 1, 2020-2021, the credit, no credit temporary grading policy be extended to semester 2 in order to provide students in grades 6 through 12 with additional support during the pandemic. I'd also like to add, and she will cover this, that this is also being proactive as we anticipate the likely passage of AB 104, which would have implications if they pass that and we haven't approved something like this. It would involve us potentially needing to alter transcripts after the fact. So we need to get ahead of that. So I'll pass it to Director Graywell. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Woodward. Okay. Good evening, President Larson, Superintendent Hagelin, trustees, executive cabinet, Pleasanton community, and staff. This evening, we'll review a proposal to extend the semester 1 credit, no credit grading policy to semester 2. During this week of the educator, I'd like to begin with gratitude to our teachers who have dedicated themselves to supporting students all year. I'd especially like to thank the Committee of Secondary Teachers and Administrators who have contributed to the discussion about grading practices. Since January, this group of instructional leaders representing all 612 schools, departments, and grade levels has met 7 times to review PUSD data trends and current literature, and they have analyzed grading options based on the research to formulate policy recommendations. After each meeting, the committee's work was shared with all 6th through 12th grade teachers to solicit additional feedback. First, some background, on grading policy in 2020-2021. In January, a credit no credit policy was approved for semester 1 to allow students time to remediate D and F grades and to address the pandemic-related impact on their mental health. From February through April, a spring credit recovery program was held to allow students to remediate semester 1 grades during semester 2, and approximately 160 high school students completed that program successfully. Finally, upon recommendation from the Grading Practices Committee, in February, the grading scale for PUSD was adapted to set the D at 50% to help a greater number of struggling students to earn passing grades this semester. So let's take a look at the impact of that temporary grading scale implemented for semester 2, which set the D at 50%. Since quarter 3 progress reports were posted in early February, the quarter 3 grades posted in late March show that in high school, the number of failing grades declined by close to 800, with a nearly corresponding increase in the number of Ds. Similarly, in middle school, the number of Fs declined by approximately 300, with a similar increase in Ds. So the policy seems to have helped narrow the gap for many students who were close to earning Ds and enabled them to pass some courses. When comparing grades at quarter 3 in 2020-21 with 2019-20, both high school and middle school the D's and F's are still quite high, but quite a bit higher than last year's grades. You'll notice that the change here indicates the number of D's and F's. These grades were posted just before school shut down in March of last year. Please note that in-person learning for 2020-21 did not begin until Q3 was nearly completed in mid-March, so the effect of the return to school had not yet had sufficient time to show an impact on student achievement when these grades were posted. Our intention was to do further analysis on Q4 progress grades data before having our Grading Practices Committee meet to consider any further recommendations on grading policy. That being said, there was action at the state level that had to be taken into consideration. First, Assembly Bill 104 passed the State Assembly on April 15th and has since moved to the Senate. The bill, which if passed would take effect immediately, allows parents and guardians to request to change their child's letter grades in 2020-21 to pass, no pass, or credit, no credit, which is what we use in PUSD. Additionally, in March, the University of California announced its decision to extend the acceptance of credit, no credit grades from last year to include the 2021 school year, which the California State University system had already decided to do. Thus, our Grading Practices Committee met in late April to discuss these new events and to determine if the impact on PUSD grading policy, if any changes would be needed. So taking these factors into account, the committee came to consensus to recommend an extension of the Semester 1 temporary credit, no credit policy to Semester 2. Adopting the credit, no credit policy proactively would ensure adequate time is provided to teachers to implement the changes in their gradebooks for Semester 2. It would also ensure that all students receive the same equitable opportunity to have D and F grades changed to credit, no credit, and not just those who submit a request for a change as per the language in proposed legislation AB 104. So to summarize, the Semester 2 temporary grading scale of D at 50% remains in effect. In addition, we propose extending the Semester 1 temporary credit, no credit grading policy for Ds and Fs to Semester 2. This infographic details the proposed extension of the credit, no credit grading policy for this semester. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Trustee Maher.
Sorry. Students receive a credit or no credit mark may need to retake the course in order to meet graduation and or college entrance. I understand the college entrance. What graduation requirements would need to be above a credit?
No, that's only applicable for college entrance. Thank you for that clarification.
Oh, okay.
Credit grades would meet graduation requirements.
I will add, though, that if they received the no credit and that was a graduation requirement, then they would need to retake that.
But not if they receive credit? Okay, good.
Correct, yes.
Any other questions? Comments? Motion?
I'll move approval of the, to extend the Semester 1 2020-2021 temporary credit, no credit grading policy for students in grades 6 to 12 to Semester 2 2020-2021.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Oh,
I wanted to ask, I just wanted to ask I wanted to make a point.
okay. Let's, if it's all right, I'll pause the vote. Go ahead.
I wanted to thank you for bringing this to us. I just want to emphasize that I don't want to be in the same position again. And, you know, we know this is unusual circumstances, but we really need to help with the gap with our students who are failing for whatever reason. You know, I know the district's done a lot of work to investigate empathy interviews, but at the end of the day, some of our students are failing, and we need to own up on that and figure out how to help bridge that gap for our students. So I do applaud the district for, recognizing that this is the best for our students now, and that, we've got plans moving forward to help bridge the gap so our students will be successful. So, thank you.
All right, so I'll start over. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Maher? Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. Yeah, the AB 104 is it's got a lot more in it than just the credit, no credit. And I do also applaud the district for kind of getting ahead of this. There's also competing legislation. There's probably going to be some reconciliation, but we don't really know what it's going to come out of that. And I appreciate the effort on behalf of our students to make sure that they can be, it's not only by request. 12.7, Resolution 2020-2021.25, recognition of Student Mental Health Week. Mr. Dialazzo?
Yes, thank you, President Larson. I'd actually like to ask our Coordinator of Student Services, Ashley Sprader, I believe she's on the call. She's just done a great job leading this work, so I'd like to ask her to introduce this resolution and then maybe start us off on the resolution, Ms. Sprader, and then you could be part of the rotation after you hand it off to Dr. Haglin, who can go first, and then we'll go around the room. So, Ms. Sprader, are you there?
I am here.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, everyone. The California Association of School Counselors supports May 10th through the 14th, 2021 as Student Mental Health Week. Resolution 2020-2021.25 is an effort to bring awareness to the importance of student mental health and to address issues including trauma and suicide prevention. Pleasanton Unified School District is committed to student success and recognizes the necessary connections needed to support our students' mental health and emotional well-being. Thank you to all of our PUSD staff that work very hard to best support the wellness of students. Our student assistance program specialists and our amazing counseling staff have created resources specific to celebrating Student Mental Health Week, May 10th through the 14th. These additional resources can be found on the homepage of the PUSD Wellness website. Additional student-based resources, including those created by our very own PUSD SciEx students that represent the Health and Wellness Committee, can be also found on the Student Mental Health Week page within the Wellness website. We truly believe that the intentional practice of self-care beginning at a young age is essential to promote the ongoing development of positive coping strategies. Thank you to all of our stakeholders for the ongoing conversations and collaboration in support of mental health awareness. We appreciate the consideration of this Mental Health Week resolution. Would you guys like me to start the resolution? Is that the best way to do it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
With that, whereas Pleasanton Unified School District is committed to supporting student achievement while providing a foundation for mental and physical health, personal growth, and civic engagement, and
Whereas student mental health needs too often can go unnoticed or unaddressed at school. And
Whereas reducing the stigma surrounding mental health will empower students to speak up when they need help, and
Whereas research has shown that adverse childhood experiences have lasting harmful impacts and can leave students feeling disenfranchised if not addressed. And
Whereas students in California are subjected to community and school-based acts of violence or threats, and
Whereas many students in California have experienced traumatic natural disaster events such as wildfires, mudslides, evacuations, and earthquakes, and most recently, a global pandemic, and
Whereas the overuse of social media can result in students feeling disconnected from their peers, and
whereas Pleasanton Unified School District understands that the early identification of intervention in and treatment of mental health and behavioral issues is paramount for a healthy student body and school community, and
Whereas Pleasanton Unified School District recognizes the need for comprehensive, coordinated mental health services for students in school is a critical responsibility as part of an overall education plan outlined in Board Policy 5030, and
Whereas Pleasanton Unified School District recognizes the need for student support providers, which may include credentialed school counselors, school nurses, school social workers, mental health clinicians, school psychologists, and/or community wraparound services within the school and or community setting to support the wellness and mental health needs of our students. And
whereas Pleasanton Unified School District supports student wellness through health education, physical education and activity, health services, psychological and counseling services, nutrition services, and fostering a safe and healthy school environment. And
whereas Pleasanton Unified School District recognizes that student voice is critical to the process and encourages student-based participation in peer-to-peer education, committees, clubs, and programs to advocate and support mental health and well-being amongst peers. And
whereas it is appropriate that a week should be set aside each year for the direction of our thoughts towards our students' mental health and well-being. And
now, therefore, be it resolved that we do hereby declare the week of May 10th, 2021 to May 14th, 2021 as Student Mental Health Week in the Pleasanton Unified School District. And
be it further resolved that we invite families to discuss with students why it is essential to work together to support wellness in order to have a safe, strong, and resilient community.
Wonderful. Do I have a motion?
I will move approval of resolution number 2021.25 in support of Student Mental Health Week.
I'll second it.
All right. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Thank you very much. We have another resolution, but I'm not sure that we need to read this one out loud. 12.8. Sorry, Ahmad. Report discussion and possible action on resolution number 2021.23, elect to adopt school vesting.
yes, I don't think we need to read this one. I will just summarize it. Back last year, we negotiated with our CSA Chapter 155 to revise our health benefit vesting into CalPERS. And so through this agreement, we would limit our OPEB liabilities in the out years for anyone retiring after July of 2021. Only employees that have more than 50 years of service would the district contribute that minimum CalPERS medical system. Our retirees can still participate in the CalPERS medical system for their retirement plan, but this would limit the district's contribution, the minimum required contribution, and this is in alignment with our obligations to our APT and management as well.
Questions? All right, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of resolution number 2020-2021.23, electing to adopt school vesting under section 22-895 of the Public Employees Medical and Hospital Care Act with respect to a recognized employee organization.
I'll second it.
All right. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
Larson? Aye. Thank you. 12.9, report discussion possible action on the ratification of amendment number 4 for Robert Bothman Construction for Phase 2 site work for the kindergarten area at the rebuild and modernization at Lidingston. Is John going to be with us tonight?
Yeah,
Here.
John, you ready?
Yeah, should I go? I'm
Go.
ready to go.
Go.
Good evening, everyone. Board members, Superintendent Dr. Haglin, and the community. This item here for Bothman is for Lidingston, and it's the 4th Amendment. It's actually, we're returning to the board for a ratification of an authorized delegation of authority back in March, and that was for $4.1 million. Since the delegation of authority, the facilities and construction team continued negotiations with the Bothman Construction and to look for ways to reduce the costs of the quoted amount that we went to the board the last time. We found a reduction of $17,000, and And so that will be applied to the project contingency. And so we anticipate 2 more site work amendments for Bothman after this amendment number 4. One is to continue the original scope of work, which is the courtyard area and the building pads for the admin building and the library. But then also there's another component, another amendment that will be coming back to the board regarding the added scope of work when the E10 site was canceled by the board. So those 2 other amendments for the site work will be coming back. The lease amendment number 4 is on budget, and the overall project continues to trend on budget. And so the recommended action is the administration recommends the Board of Trustees to discuss and approve the ratification of amendment number 4 with Robert A. Bothman Construction.
Any questions from the trustees?
I don't have a question, just a comment. Just thank you for all this information. Having conversations with you, John, and appreciate all the hard work and all the facilities and oversight of everything that you're managing. And it's an ongoing task. And so just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to make the motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve, the Board of Trustees ratify the Robert A. Bodman Construction Lease Amendment number 4 for the Lidixson project.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to ratify item 12.9. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
McCaughey?
Aye.
Maher? Aye. Miller?
Aye.
An aye. Larson. All right, 12.10. This is a one-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into an agreement for the construction of fence. Yeah, exactly. 1 more month, baby. Delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into the agreement for the construction of fencing projects at Alice L. Donlin, Vintage Hills, and Walnut Grove.
Great. Before I hand it over to John, the next 2 items are delegations of authority, and the reason we're using those is mainly because of timing. And those limits that we've set are to stay within the budget. And I'll let John kind of give you some good news about item 12.10, which we opened bids yesterday, and so we have some information to share with you. But we are looking for that delegation of authority on these 2 items. John, you want to finish this one off?
Yes, and I'll be quick too. We do have an apparent low bidder. We had 4 bidders. And the apparent low bidder is Golden Bay Fence Plus Ironworks Incorporated, and that amount is for $992,021, which is approximately $678,000 under budget. So we're going through the process now of just the paperwork, the bonds, and making sure that there's no bid protests. And once this board item is approved, we will have the authority then to enter into the contract, or the superintendent will, in the next few days or the next week, whenever we get all the paperwork all straightened out. So let's see, we will bring to the Board of Trustees the ratification at a later date, just like we did with the Bothman project or the amendment. And so the administration recommends that the Board of Trustees discuss and approve the delegation of authority for these fencing projects in the amount of $992,021.
Any questions?
John, I think you want to keep the delegation of authority to the higher amount just in case the apparent low bidder is not our low bidder, and so we have that authority to go to the second bidder.
You're right. So that amount would be 1.6 million, 1,670,000 as noted in the agenda item as the budget.
I think that's a good idea. You just never know who's going to fall out, or, like you said, get a big protest. Is there a motion to give the one-time delegation of authority?
Make the motion. One-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into the agreement for the construction of the fencing projects at Alice L. Donlin, Vintage Hills, and Walnut Grove.
Microphone.
One-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into the agreement for the construction of the fencing projects at LSL, Donlin, Vintage Hills, and Walnut Grove.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Kashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. All right, 12.11, one-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into a contract for the purchase of new traffic signals for the Foothill Off-Site Improvements Project.
Go, John.
Yes, and we're coming back for a delegation of authority here as well. Next board meeting, we'll have a few others, but we don't want to do this as a regular basis. It's just that we're going into summer and things are really critical for ordering materials. This delegation of authority is to expedite the purchase of the traffic signals for the off-site improvements off of Foothill. And then, let's see, we're working as fast as we can with the manufacturers of these poles. We're receiving quotes. We don't have them all in right now. But as soon as we do get them, this will authorize us to enter into an agreement, or should I say the superintendent. The off-site improvement plans were resubmitted to the city back on the 30th of April, and we already have answered all of the city's required questions, and this is the second submittal that we have done with the city. So we expect a fast turnaround. We will be receiving bids on June 3rd. With the site work contractor, and that will be a separate board agenda item, and that'll be a delegation of authority on May 20th of this month, the board meeting then. So the recommended action is the administration recommends the Board of Trustees approve this one-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to purchase traffic signals for the Foothill Portable Replacement Project for an amount not to exceed $130,000.
So this is just the hardware, not the labor, right?
Yeah. Correct. This is a long lead item, and that's why we're separating this out.
Makes sense. Any questions or a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve one-time delegation of authority for the superintendent to enter into a contract for the purchase of the new traffic signals for the Foothill off-site improvements.
I'll second it.
I think Steve beat you tonight. Trustee Carrion?
Aye.
Makashi?
Aye.
Maher?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Larson, aye. All right, thank you very much for those items. Board reports and requests tonight. Are there any reports on meetings you've attended or any requests for future agenda items?
I just went to the ROP celebration. It was just amazing to see how wonderful all the students are doing, and congratulations.
Great. All right, well, in that case, if there's no other further reports or requests, the next regular board meeting will take place on Thursday, May 20th, 2021, and with that, we're adjourned.